important, or it may be so much waste of paper. But it isn't the only reason I summoned you. She started moving things on the table, making some shaky stacks taller to clear a space. I understand from Anaya that you might become a dreamer. The last was Koryanin Nadil 473 years ago, and from what I can make of the records, she barely deserves the name. It would be quite interesting if you do. She tested me, Varen said I, but she couldn't be sure that any of my dreams foretold the future. That is only part of what a dreamer does, child. Perhaps the least part. Anaya believes in bringing girls along
Hey,
too
Fire,
slowly,
how
in
you
my
doing?
opinion. Look here.
Just gotta share
With
this
one
out.
finger,
We'll
Varen
do a
drew a
dab
number
or
of
two.
parallel lines across the area she had cleared, lines clear and dust atop the old beeswax. Let these represent
And
worlds that
then
might exist if
we'll
different
start
choices
it
had
up.
been made, if major turning points in the pattern had gone another way. The worlds reached by the portal stones,
I got a
Egwene
few
said,
rolled up
to
already
show she had
too.
listened to Varen's lectures on the journey from Toman Head. What could this possibly have to do with whether or not she was a dreamer? Very good. But the pattern may be even more complex than that, child. The wheel weaves our lives to make the pattern of an age, but the ages themselves are woven into the age lace, the great pattern. Who can know if this is even the 10th part of the weaving, though? Some in the Age of Legends apparently believed that there were still other worlds, even harder to reach than the worlds of the portal stones, if that can be believed, lying like this. She drew more lines, cross-hatching the first set. For a moment she stared at them, the warp and the woof of the weave. Perhaps the wheel of time weaves a still greater pattern from worlds. Straightening, she dusted her hands. Well, that is neither here nor there. In all of these worlds, whatever their other variations, a few things are constant. One is that the Dark One is imprisoned in all of them. In spite of herself, Egwene stepped closer to peer at the lines Varen had drawn. In all of them? How can that be? Are you saying there is a father of lies for each world? The thought of so many Dark Ones made her shiver. No, child. There is one creator who exists everywhere at once for all of these worlds. In the same way, there is only one Dark One who also exists in all of these worlds at once. If he is freed from the prison the Creator made in one world, he is freed on all. So long as he is kept prisoner in one, he remains imprisoned on all. That does not seem to make sense, Egwene protested. Paradox, child. The Dark One is the embodiment of paradox and chaos, the destroyer of reason and logic, the breaker of balance, the unmaker of order. The owl suddenly took flight on silent wings, landing atop a large white skull on a shelf behind the Aes Sedai. It peered down at the two women, blinking. Egwene had noticed the skull when she came in, with its curled horns and snout, and vaguely wondered what sort of ram had so big a head. Now she took in the roundness of it, the high forehead. Not a ram's skull, a trolloc. She drew a shuddering breath. Varen, said I, what does this have to do with being a dreamer? The Dark One is bound in Shale Pool, and I do not want to even think of him escaping. But the seals on his prison are weakening. Even novices know that now. Do with being a dreamer? Why, nothing, child. Except that we must all confront the Dark One in one way or another. He is prisoned now, but the pattern did not bring Randall Thor into the world for no purpose. The dragon Reborn will face the Lord of the Grave. That much is sure. If Rand survives that long, of course. The Dark One will try to distort the pattern if he can. Well, we have gone rather far afield, haven't we? Forgive me, Varen said I, but if this, Egwene indicated the lines drawn in the dust, has nothing to do with being a dreamer, why are you telling me about it? Varen stared at her as if she were deliberately being dense. Nothing. Of course it has something to do with it, child. The point is that there is a third constant besides the Creator and the Dark One. There is a world that lies within each of these others, inside all of them at the same time, or perhaps surrounding them. Writers in the Age of Legends called it Telaran Riont, the unseen world. Perhaps the world of dreams is a better translation. Many people, ordinary folk who could not think of channeling, sometimes glimpse Telaran Riod in their dreams, and even catch glimmers of these other worlds through. Think of some of the peculiar things you've seen in your dreams. But a dreamer, child, a true dreamer, can enter Telaran Riod. Egwene tried to swallow, but a lump in her throat stopped her. Enter it? I, I don't think I am a dreamer, Varen Sedai. Anaya Sedai's tests, Varen cut her off, prove nothing one way or the other. And Anaya still believes that you may very well be one.
I gotta do something on my Raid Shadow Legends real quick.
Mumbled. Light, I want to be, don't I?
Just
I want
got a
to
new
learn.
legendary
I want it all.
champion.
You have no time to wait, child. The Amerlin has entrusted a great task to you and Nynaeve. You must reach out for any tool you might be able to use. Varen dug a red wooden box from under the welter on her table. The box was large enough to hold sheets of paper, but when the Aes Sedai opened the lid a crack, all she pulled out was a ring carved from stone, all flecks and stripes of blue and brown and red, and too large to be a finger ring. Here, child. Egwene shifted the papers to take it, and her eyes widened in surprise. The ring certainly looked like stone, but it felt harder than steel and heavier than lead, and the circle of it was twisted. If she ran a finger along one edge, it would go around twice, inside as well as out. It only had one edge. She moved her finger along that edge twice, just to convince herself. Coriana Nedia, Varen said, had that ter'angreal in her possession for most of her life. You will keep it now. Egwene almost dropped the ring. A ter'angreal? I am to keep a ter'angreal? Varen seemed not to notice her shock. According to her, it eases the passage to Telaran Riad. She claimed it would work for those without talent as well as for Aes Sedai, so long as you are touching it when you sleep. There are dangers, of course. Telaran Riad is not like other dreams. What happens there is real. You are actually there, instead of just glimpsing it. She pushed back the sleeve of her dress, revealing a faded scar the length of her forearm. I tried it myself once, some years ago. Anaya's healing did not work as well as it should have. Remember that. The Aes Sedai let her sleeve cover the scar again. I will be careful, Varen Sedai. Real? My dreams are bad enough as they are. I want no dreams that leave scars. I'll put it in a sack and stick it in a dark corner and leave it there. But she wanted to learn. She wanted to be Aes Sedai, and no Aes Sedai had been a dreamer in nearly 500 years. I'll be very careful. She slipped the ring into her pouch and tugged the drawstrings tight, then picked up the papers Varen had given her. Remember to keep it hidden, child. No novice or even an accepted should have a thing like that in her possession, but it may prove useful to you. Keep it hidden. Yes, Varen Sedai. Remembering Varen's scar, she almost wished another Aes Sedai would come along and take it from her right then. Good child. Now off with you. It grows late, and you must be up early to help with breakfast. Sleep well. Varen sat looking at the door for a long time after it closed behind Egwene. The owl hooted softly behind her. Pulling the red box to her, she opened the lid all the way and frowned at what nearly filled the space. Page upon page, covered with a precise hand, the black ink barely faded after nearly 500 years. Coriana Nadiel's notes, everything she had learned in 50 years of studying that peculiar ter'angreal. A secretive woman, Corianin. She had kept by far the greater part of her knowledge from everyone, trusting it only to these pages. Only chance and a habit of rummaging through old papers in the library had led Varen to them. As far as she could discover, no Aes Sedai besides herself knew of the ter'angreal. Corianin had managed to erase its existence from the records. Once again she considered burning the manuscript, just as she had considered giving it to Egwene. But destroying knowledge, any knowledge, was anathema to her. As for the other, no. It is best by far to leave things as they are. What will happen, will happen. She let the lid drop shut. Now, where did I put that page? Frowning, she began to search the stacks of books and papers for the leather folder. Egwene was already out of her mind. Chapter 22. The Price of the Ring. Egwene had only gone a short distance from Varen's rooms when Shiriam met her. The mistress of novices wore a preoccupied frown. If someone hadn't remembered Varen speaking to you, I might not have found you. The Aes Sedai sounded mildly irritated. Come along, child. You are holding everything up. What are those papers? Egwene clutched them a little tighter. She tried to make her voice both meek and respectful. Varen Sedai thinks I should study them, Aes Sedai. What would she do if Shiriam asked to see them? What excuse could she give for refusing? What explanation for pages telling all about 13 women of the Black Aja and the Terangrial they had stolen? But Shiriam seemed to have dismissed the papers from her mind as soon as she asked. Never mind that. You are wanted, and everyone is waiting. She took Egwene's arm and forced her to walk faster. Wanted, Shiriam, said I. Waiting for what? Shiriam shook her head with exasperation. Did you forget that you are to be raised to the accepted? When you come to my study tomorrow, you'll be wearing the ring, though I doubt it will soothe you very much. Egwene tried to stop short, but the Aes Sedai hurried her on, taking a narrow set of stairs that curled down through the library walls. Tonight? Already? But I'm half asleep, Aes Sedai, and dirty, and I thought I would have days yet, to get ready, to prepare. The hour waits on no woman, Shiriam said. The wheel weaves as the wheel wills when the wheel wills. Besides, how would you prepare? You already know the things you must, more than your friend Nynaeve did. She pushed Egwene through a tiny door at the foot of the stairs and hurried her across another hall to a ramp curving down and down. I listened to the lectures, Egwene protested, and I remember them, but can't I have a night's sleep first?
There you go.
The winding ramp seemed to have no end. The Amerlin seat decided there was no point in waiting. Shiriam gave Egwene a sidelong smile. Her exact words were, once you decide to gut a fish, there's no use waiting till it rots. Elaine has already been through the arches by this time, and the Amerlin means you to go through tonight as well. Not that I'm in such a hurry, she added, half to herself. But when the Amerlin commands, obey. Egwene let herself be pulled down the ramp in silence, a knot forming in her belly. Nynaeve had been far from forthcoming about what had happened when she was raised to the accepted. She would not speak of it at all, except for a grimaced, I hate Aes Sedai. Egwene was trembling by the time the ramp finally ended at the broad hallway, far below the tower in the rock of the island. The hall was plain and undecorated, the pale rock through which it had been hewn smooth, but left otherwise untouched, and there was only one set of dark wooden doors, as tall and as wide as fortress gates, and plain, although of smoothly finished and finely fitted planks at the very end. Those great doors were so well balanced, though, Miriam easily pushed one open and pulled Egwene through after her into a great domed chamber. Not before time, Elida snapped. She stood to one side in her red-fringed shawl beside a table on which sat 3 large silver chalices. Lamps on tall stands illumined the chamber, and what sat centered under the dome. 3 rounded silver arches, just tall enough to walk under, sitting on a thick silver ring with their ends touching where they joined it. An Aes Sedai sat cross-legged on the bare rock before each of the spots where arches joined ring, all 3 wearing their shawls. Alana was the sister of the green Aja, but she did not know the yellow sister or the white. Surrounded by the glow of Saidar embraced, the 3 Aes Sedai stared fixedly at the arches, and within the silver structure an answering glow flickered and grew. That structure was a Terangrial, and whatever it had been made for in the Age of Legends, now novices passed through it to become accepted. Inside it, Egwene would have to face her fears 3 times. The white light within the arches no longer flickered. It stayed within them as if confined, but it filled the space, made it opaque. Be easy, Elida, Shiriam said calmly. We will be done soon. She turned to Egwene. Novices are given 3 chances at this. You may refuse twice to enter, but at the 3rd refusal you are sent away from the tower forever. That is how it is done usually, and you certainly have the right to refuse, but I do not think the Amerlin seat will be pleased with you if you do. She should not be given this chance. There was iron in Elida's voice, and her face was scarcely softer. I do not care what the potential is. She should be put out of the tower, or failing that,
Take a
set to
drink real
scrubbing
quick.
floors for the next 10 years. Shiriam gave the Red Sister a sharp look. You were not so adamant about Elaine. You demanded to be part of this, Elida, perhaps because of Elaine, and you will do your part for this girl as well as you are supposed to, or you will leave and I will find another. The 2 Aes Sedai stared at one another until Egwene would not have been surprised to see the glow of the One Power surround them. Finally, Elida gave a toss to her head and sniffed loudly. If it must be done, let us do it. Give the miserable girl her chance to refuse and be done with it. It is late. I won't refuse. Egwene's voice quavered, but she steadied it and held her head high. I want to go on. Good, Shiriam said. Good. Now I will tell you 2 things no woman hears until she stands where you are.
Let's
Once
take
you
a little
begin, you
breather
must go on
before
to the end.
we
Refuse
hit the
at any
fresh
point,
dab.
and you will be put out of the tower just as if you had refused to begin for the 3rd time. Second, to seek, to strive, is to know danger. She sounded as if she had said this many times. There was a light of sympathy in her eyes, but her face was almost as stern as Elida's. The sympathy frightened Egwene more than the sternness. Some women have entered and never come out. When the Terangrial was allowed to grow quiet, they were not there, and they were never seen again. If you will survive, you must be steadfast. Falter, fail, and Shiriam's face raised the unspoken words home. Egwene shivered. This is your last chance. Refuse now, and it counts only as the first. You may still try twice more. If you accept now, there is no turning back. It is no shame to refuse. I could not do it my first time. Choose. They never came out? Egwene swallowed hard. I want to be Aes Sedai, and first I have to become a Senate. I accept, Shiriam. Then ready yourself. Egwene blinked, then she had to enter unclothed. She bent to set down the giant bundle of papers Varen had given her, and hesitated. If she left them there, Shiriam or Elida, either one, could go through them while she was inside the Terangrial. They could find that smaller Terangrial in her pouch. If she refused to go on, she could hide them away, perhaps leave them with Nynaeve. Her breath caught. I cannot refuse now. I've already begun. Have you already chosen to refuse, child? Shiriam asked, frowning. Knowing what that will mean now? No, Aes Sedai, Egwene said quickly. Hastily, she undressed and folded her clothes, then set them on top of the pouch and the papers. It would have to do. Beside the Terangrial, Alana suddenly spoke. There is some sort of... She never took her eyes from the arches. An echo, almost. I do not know from where. Is there a problem? Shiriam asked sharply. She sounded surprised, too. I will not send a woman in there if there is any problem. Egwene looked yearningly at her piled clothes. Please, yes, like a problem. Something that will let me hide those papers without refusing to enter. No, Alana said. It is like having a bite me buzz around your head when you're trying to think, but it does not interfere. I would not have mentioned it. It has never happened before that I ever heard. She shook her head. It is gone now. Perhaps, Elida said dryly. Others thought such a small thing was not worth mentioning. Let us go on. Shiriam's tone would not put up with any more distractions. Come. With a last glance at her clothes and the hidden papers, Egwene followed her toward the arches. The stone felt like ice under her bare feet. "Whom do you bring with you, sister?" Elida intoned. Continuing her measured pace, Shiriam replied, "One who comes as a candidate for acceptance, sister." The three Aes Sedai around the Terangrial did not move. "Is she ready?" "She is ready to leave behind what she was, and passing through her fears gain acceptance." "Does she know her fears?" "She has never faced them, but now is willing." "Then let her face what she fears." Even in its formality, there was a note of satisfaction in Elida's voice. "The first time," Shiriam said, "is for what was. The way back will come but once. Be steadfast." Egwene took a deep breath and stepped forward through the arch and into the gloom. Light swallowed her whole. Jine Daughtry dropped by. "There's odd news down from Bear Lawn with the peddler." Egwene raised her head from the cradle she was rocking. Rand was standing in the doorway. For an instant her head spun. She looked from Rand, "My husband," to the child in the cradle, "My daughter," and back again in wonder. "The way back will come but once. Be steadfast." It was not her own thought, but a disembodied voice that could have been inside her head or out, male or female, yet emotionless and unknowable. Somehow it did not seem strange to her. The moment of wonder passed, and the only thing to wonder about was why she had thought anything seemed out of round. Of course Rand was her husband, her handsome, loving husband, and Joya was her daughter, the most beautiful, sweetest little girl in the Two Rivers. Tam, Rand's father, was out with the sheep, supposedly so Rand could work on the barn, but really so he could have more time to play with Joya. This afternoon, Egwene's mother and father would come out from the village, and probably Nynaeve, to see if motherhood was interfering with Egwene's studies to replace Nynaeve as wisdom one day. "What kind of news?" she asked. She took up rocking the cradle again, and Rand came over to grin down at the tiny child wrapped in swaddling clothes. Egwene laughed softly to herself. He was so taken with his daughter that he did not hear what people said to him half the time. "Rand? What kind of news? Rand?" "What?" His grin faded. "Strange news. War. There's some big war taking up most of the world, so Jine claims. That was strange news. Word of wars seldom reached the Two Rivers till the wars were long done. He says everybody is fighting some folk called the Shawkin or the Sanchan or something like that. I never heard of them." Egwene knew. She thought she knew. Whatever it was gone. "Are you all right?" he asked. "It's nothing to upset us here, my heart. Wars never touch the Two Rivers. We are too far from everywhere for anyone to care." "I'm not upset." "Did James say anything else?" "Nothing you can believe. He sounded like a Copland. He said the peddler told him these people use Aes Sedai in battle, but then he claimed they offer 1,000 gold marks to anyone who turns an Aes Sedai over to them, and they kill anybody who hides one. It makes no sense. Well, it's nothing to trouble us. It is all a long way from here." "Aes Sedai." Egwene touched her head. "The way back comes but once." She said fast. She noticed Rand had a hand to his own head. "The headaches?" she asked. He nodded, his eyes suddenly tight. "That powder Nynaeve gave me doesn't seem to be working the last few days." She hesitated. These headaches of his worried her. They grew worse every time they came now. And worst of all was something she had not noticed at first, something she almost wished she never had noticed. When Rand's head hurt, strange things happened soon after. Lightning out of a clear sky, smashing to bits that huge oak stump he had been working 2 days to root out where he and Tam were clearing new fields. Storms that Nynaeve did not hear coming when she listened to the wind. Wildfires in the forest. And the deeper his pain grew, the worse what followed. No one else had connected these things to Rand, not even Nynaeve, and Egwene was grateful for that. She did not want to think about what it might mean. That is plain stupid foolish, she told herself. I must know if I'm going to help him. Because she had a secret of her own, one that frightened her even as she tried to puzzle out what it meant. Nynaeve was teaching her the herbs, teaching Egwene to follow her as wisdom one day. Nynaeve's cures often worked in near miraculous fashion. Wounds healed with barely a scar, sick folk brought back from the edge of the grave. But 3 times now, Egwene had cured someone Nynaeve had given up for dead. 3 times she had sat to hold a hand through the last hour and seen the person get up from a deathbed. Nynaeve had questioned her closely on what she had done, what herbs she had used, in what quantity. Thus far, she had not found the courage to admit that she had done nothing. I must have done something. Once might be chance, but 3 times? I have to figure it out. I have to learn. That set off a buzz in her head, as though the words were echoing inside her skull. If I could do something for them, I can help my husband. Let me try, Anne, she said. And as she stood through the open door, she saw a silver arch standing in front of the house, an arch filled with white light. The way back will come but once. Be steadfast. She took 2 steps toward the door before she could stop herself. She halted, looked back at Joya gurgling in her cradle, at Rand still pressing hand to his head and looking at her as if wondering where she was going. No, she said. No, this is what I want. This is what I want. Why can't I have this too? She did not understand her own words. Of course this was what she wanted, and she had it. What is it you want, Egwene? Rand asked. If it's anything I can get, you know I will. If I can't get it, I'll make it. The way back will come but once. Be steadfast. She took another step into the doorway. The silver arch beckoned her. Something waited on the other side. Something she wanted more than anything else in the world. Something she had to do. Egwene, there was a thump behind her. She looked over her shoulder to see Rand on his knees, bowed and head cradled in his hands. The pain had never hit him so hard. What will come after this? Ah, light, he panted. Light hurts. Light, it hurts worse than ever. Egwene? Be steadfast. It was waiting. Something she had to do. Had to. She took a step. It was hard. Harder than anything she'd ever done in her life. Outside, toward the arch. Behind her, Joya was laughing. Egwene! Egwene, I can't! He cut off with a loud groan. Steadfast. She stiffened her back and kept walking, but she could not keep the tears from rolling down her cheeks. Rand's groans built to a scream, drowning Joya's laughter. From the corner of her eye, Egwene saw Tam coming, running as hard as he could. He can't help, she thought, and tears became racking sobs. There is nothing he can do, but I could. I could. She stepped into the light and was consumed. Trembling and sobbing, Egwene stepped out of the arch, the same by which she had entered, memory cascading back with Shiriam's face confronting her. Cold, clear water washed away her tears as Elida slowly emptied a silver chalice over her head. Her weeping went on. She did not think it would ever end. You are washed clean, Elida pronounced, of what sin you may have done and of those done against you. You are washed clean of what crime you may have committed and of those committed against you. You come to us washed clean and pure in heart and soul. Light, Egwene thought as the water ran down her body. Let it be so. Can water wash away what I did? Her name was Joya, she told Shiriam between sobs. Joya, nothing can be worth what I... There is a price to become Aes Sedai, Shiriam replied, but the sympathy was back in her eyes, stronger than before. There is always a price. Was it real? Did I dream it? Weeping swallowed what she wanted to say. Did I leave you to die? Did I leave my baby? Shiriam put an arm around her shoulders, began guiding her around the circle of arches. Every woman I have ever watched come out of there has asked that question. The answer is no one knows. It has been speculated that perhaps some of those who do not come back chose to stay because they found a happier place and lived out their lives there. Her voice hardened. If
They
it is
wasn't too
real,
bad.
and they
Can't
stayed from
complain none.
choice, then I hope the lives they live are far from happy. I have no sympathy for any who run from their responsibilities. The edge on her tone softened slightly. Myself, I believe it is not real. But the danger is. Remember that. She stopped in front of the next glow-filled arch. Are you ready? Shifting her feet, Egwene nodded, and Shiriam took her arm away. The second time is for what is. The way back will come but once. Be steadfast. Egwene trembled. Whatever happens, it cannot be worse than the last. It cannot be. She stepped into the glow. She stared down at her dress, blue silk sewn with pearls, all dusty and torn. Her head came up and she took in the ruins of a great palace around her. The royal palace of Andor in Cainlin. She knew that and wanted to scream. The way back will come but once. Be steadfast. The world was not the way she wanted it, no way that she could think of without wanting to cry, but all her tears had been cried away long ago, and the world was as it was. Ruin was what she expected to see. Careless of making more rips in her dress, but as careful of sound as a mouse, she climbed one of the piles of rubble and peered into the curving streets of the inner city. As far as she could see in every direction lay ruin and desolation, buildings that looked as if they had been torn apart by madmen, thick plumes of smoke rising from the fires still burning. There were people in the streets, bands of armed men prowling, searching, and Trollocs. The men shied away from the Trollocs, and the Trollocs snarled at them and laughed, harsh, guttural laughter. But they knew each other, worked together. A Murdral came striding down the street, its black cloak swaying gently with its steps, even when the wind gusted to drive dust and rubbish past it. Men and Trollocs alike cowered under its eyeless stare. Its voice sounded like something long dead, crumbling. Do not stand there shivering. Find him. Egwene slipped back down the pile of jumbled stones as silently as she could. The way back will come but once. Be steadfast. She stopped, afraid the whisper had come from shadow spawn. In some way, though, she was sure it had not. Glancing back over her shoulder, half fearful of seeing the Murdral standing where she had just been, she hurried onward and into the ruined palace, climbing over fallen timbers, squeezing between heavy blocks of collapsed masonry as she made her way. Once she stepped on a woman's arm, sticking out from under a mound of plaster and bricks that had been an interior wall, and perhaps part of the floor above. She noticed the arm as little as she noticed the great serpent ring on one finger. She had trained herself not to see the dead buried in the refuse heap Trollocs and dark friends had made of Cainlin. She could do nothing for the dead. Forcing her way through a narrow gap where part of the ceiling had fallen, she found herself in a room half buried under what had stood above it. Rand lay with a heavy beam pinning him across the waist, his legs hidden beneath the stone blocks that filled half the room. Dust and sweat coated his face. He opened his eyes when she came near him. You came back. He forced the words out in a hoarse rasp. I was afraid. No matter. You have to help me. She sank wearily to the floor. I could lift that beam easily with air, but as soon as it moves, everything else will come down on top of you, on top of both of us. I cannot manage all of it, man. His laugh was bitter and painful, and cut off almost as soon as it began. Fresh sweat glistened on his face, and he spoke with an effort. I could shift the beam myself. You know that. I could shift that and the stones above, all of them. But I have to let go of myself to do it, and I can't trust that. I cannot trust. He stopped, wheezing for breath. I do not understand, she said slowly. Let go of yourself? What can't you trust? The way back will come but once. Be steadfast. She rubbed her hands roughly over her ears. The madness, Egwene. I am actually holding it at bay. His gasping laugh made her skin prickle. But it takes everything I have. just to do that. If I let go, even a little, even for an instant, the madness will have me. I won't care what I do then. You have to help me. How, Ran? I've tried everything I know. Tell me how, and I will do it. His hand flopped out, fell just short of a dagger lying in the dust, bare-bladed. The dagger, he whispered. His hand made a painful journey back to his chest. Here, in the heart. Kill me. She stared at him, at the dagger, as if they were both poisonous serpents. No, Rand, I will not. I cannot. How could you ask such a thing? Slowly his hand crept back toward the dagger. His fingers came short again. He strained, moaning, brushed it with a fingertip. Before he could try again, she kicked it away from him. He collapsed with a sob. Tell me why, she demanded. Why would you ask me to murder you? I will heal you. I will do anything to get you out of there, but I cannot kill you. Why? They can turn me away. His breathing was so tortured she wished she could weep. If they take me, the murderer, the dreadlords, they can turn me to the shadow. If madness has me, I cannot fight them. I won't know what they are doing till it is too late. If there is even a spark of life left when they find me, they can still do it. Please, Egwene, for the love of the light, kill me. I can't, Rand. Light, help me, I cannot. The way back will come but once. Be steadfast. She looked over her shoulder, and a silver arch filled with white light took up most of the open space among the rubble. Egwene, help me. Be steadfast. She stood and took a step toward the arch. It was right there in front of her. One more step and... Please, Egwene, help me. I can't reach it. For the love of the light, Egwene, help me. I cannot kill you, she whispered. I can't. Forgive me. She stepped forward. Help me, Egwene! Light burned her to ash. Out of the arch, neither noticing her nakedness nor caring. A shudder ran through her, and she covered her mouth with both hands. I couldn't, Rand, she whispered. I couldn't. Please forgive me. Light, help me. Please, Light, help Rand. Cold water poured over her head. You are washed clean of false pride, Elida intoned. You are washed clean of false ambition. You come to us washed clean in heart and soul. As the Red Sister turned away, Shiriam gently took Egwene's shoulders and guided her toward the last arch. One more, child. One more, and it is done. He said they could turn him to the shadow, Egwene mumbled. He said the Murdral and the Dreadlords could force him. Shiriam missed a step and looked around quickly. Elida was almost back to the table. The Aes Sedai surrounding the Terangrial stared at it, seeming lost to anything else. An unpleasant thing to talk of, child, Shiriam said finally and softly. Come, one more. Can they? Egwene insisted. Custom, Shiriam said, is not to speak of what happens within the Terangrial. A woman's fears are her own. Can they? Shiriam sighed, glanced at the other Aes Sedai again, then dropped her voice to a whisper and spoke swiftly. This is something known only to a few, child, even in the tower. You should not learn it now, if ever, but I will tell you. There is a weakness in being able to channel. That we learn to open ourselves to the true source means that we can be open to other things. Egwene shuddered. Calm yourself, child. It is not so easily done. It is a thing not done so far as I know. I said it has not been done since the Trolloc Wars. It took 13 Dreadlords, dark friends who could channel, weaving the flows through 13 Murdral. You see? Not easily done. There are no Dreadlords today. This is a secret of the tower, child. If others knew, we could never convince them they were safe. Only one who can channel can be turned in this way. The weakness of our strength. Everyone else is as safe as a fortress. Only their own deeds and will can turn them to the shadow. 13, Egwene said in a tiny voice. The same number who left the tower. Leandrin and 12 more. Shiriam's face hardened. That is nothing for you to dwell on. You will forget it. Her voice climbed to a normal volume. The third time is for what will be. The way back will come but once. Be steadfast. Egwene stared at the glowing arch, stared at some far distance beyond it. Leandrin and 12 others. 13 dark friends who can channel. Light help us all. She stepped into the light. It filled her. It shone through her. It burned her to the bones, seared her to the soul. She flashed incandescent in the light. Light, help me. There was nothing but the light. And the pain. Egwene stared into the standing mirror and was not sure whether she was more surprised by the ageless smoothness of her face or the striped stole that hung around her neck. The stole of the Amaryllis Sea. The way back will come but once. Be steadfast. 13. She swayed, caught at the mirror, and almost toppled it and herself to the blue-tiled floor of her dressing chamber. Something is wrong, she thought. The wrongness had nothing to do with her sudden dizziness, or at least that was not what felt wrong. It was something else. But she had no idea what. There was an Aes Sedai at her elbow, a woman with Shiriam's high cheekbones, but dark hair and concerned brown eyes, and the hand-wide stole of the keeper on her shoulders. Not Shiriam, though. Egwene had never seen her before. She was sure she knew her as well as she knew herself. Haltingly, she put a name to the woman. Beldine. Are you ill, mother? Her stole is green. That means she was raised from the green Aja. The keeper always comes from the same Aja as the Amaryllis she serves, which means if I'm the Amaryllis, then I was green Aja too. That thought shook her. Not that she had been green Aja, but that she had to reason it out. Like something is wrong with me. The way back will come, The voice in her head trailed away to finish in a buzz. 13 dark friends. I am well, Beldine, Egwene said. The name felt strange on her tongue. It felt as if she'd been saying it for years. We mustn't keep them waiting. Keep who waiting? She did not know, except that she felt infinitely sad about ending that wait, endlessly reluctant. They will be growing impatient, Mother. There was a hesitation in Beldine's voice, as if she felt the same reluctance as Egwene, but for a different reason. Unless Egwene missed her guess, behind that outer calm, Beldine was terrified. In that case, we had best be about it. Beldine nodded, then took a deep breath before crossing the carpet to where her staff of office, topped with the snowdrop white flame of Tar Valon, stood propped beside the door. I suppose we must, Mother. She took up the staff and opened the door for Egwene, then hurried ahead so that they made a procession of 2, Keeper of the Chronicles leading the Amaryllis Sea. Egwene noticed little of the corridors they took. All her attention was directed inward. What is the matter with me? Why can't I remember? Why is so much of what I almost remember wrong? She touched the 7-striped stole on her shoulders. Why am I half sure I'm still a novice? The way back will come but what? This time it ended abruptly. 13 of the Black Aja. She stumbled at that. It was a frightening thought, but it chilled her to the marrow beyond fear. It felt personal. She wanted to scream, to run and hide. She felt as if they were after her. Nonsense. The Black Aja has been destroyed. That seemed an odd thought, too. Part of her remembered something called the Great Purge. Part of her was sure no such thing had happened. Eyes fixed ahead, Beldine had not noticed her stumble. Egwene had to lengthen her stride to catch up. This woman is scared to her toenails. What in the light is she taking me to? Beldine stopped before tall, paired doors, their dark wood each inlaid with a large silver flame of Tar Valon. She wiped her hands on her dress as if they were suddenly sweaty, before opening one door and leading Egwene up a straight ramp of the same silver-streaked white stone that made Tar Valon's walls. Even here it seemed to shine. The ramp led into a large, circular room under a domed ceiling at least 30 paces high. A raised platform ran around the outer edge of the room, fronted by steps, except where this ramp and two others came out, spaced equally around the circle. The flame of Tarvalon lay centered in the floor, surrounded by widening spirals of color, the colors of the seven Ajahs. At the opposite side of the room from where the ramp entered, a high-backed chair stood, heavy and ornately carved in vines and leaves, painted in the colors of all the Ajahs. Beldine rapped her staff sharply on the floor. There was a tremor in her voice. "She comes. The Keeper of the Seals. The Flame of Tarvalon. The Amerlin Seat. She comes." With a rustle of skirts, shawled women on the platform got up from their chairs. 21 chairs in groupings of 3, each triad painted and cushioned in the same color as the fringe on the shawls of the women who stood before them. The hall of the tower, Egwene thought as she crossed the floor to her chair. The Amerlin Seat's chair. That's all it is. The hall of the tower and the sitters for the Ajahs. I've been here thousands of times, but she could not remember one of them. What am I doing in the hall of the tower? Like they'll skin me alive when they see. She was not sure what it was they would see, only that she prayed they did not. The way back will come, but the way back will... The way... The Black Ajah waits. That, at least, was whole. It came from everywhere. Why did no one else seem to hear it? Sitting in the chair of the Amerlin Seat, the chair that was also the Amerlin Seat, she realized she had no idea what to do next. The other Aes Sedai had seated themselves when she did, all but Beldine, who stood beside her with the staff, swallowing nervously. They all seemed to be waiting on her. "Begin," she said finally. It seemed to be enough. One of the red sitters stood. Egwene was shocked to recognize Elida. At the same time, she knew that Elida was the foremost of the sitters for the red, and her own bitterest enemy. The look on Elida's face as she stared across the chamber made Egwene shiver inside. It was stern and cold, and triumphant. It promised things best not thought of. "Bring him in," Elida said loudly. From one of the ramps, not the one Egwene had entered by, came the crunch of boots on stone. People appeared. A dozen Aes Sedai surrounding 3 men, 2 of them burly guards with the white teardrops of the flame of Tarvalon on their chests, tugging the chains in which the third stumbled as if dazed. Egwene jerked forward in her chair. The chained man was Rand. Eyes half closed, head sagging, he seemed nearly asleep, moving only as the chains directed. "This man," Elida proclaimed, "has named himself the Dragon Reborn." There was a buzz of distaste, not as if the listeners were surprised, but as though it were not something they wanted to hear. "This man has channeled the One Power." The buzz was louder now, disgusted and tinged with fear. "There is only one penalty for this, known and recognized in every nation, but pronounced only here, in Tarvalon, in the hall of the tower. I call on the Amerlin Seat to pronounce the sentence of gentling on this man." Elida's eyes glittered at Egwene. "Rand, what do I do? Light, what do I do?" "Why do you hesitate?" Elida demanded. "The sentence has been set down for 3,000 years. Why do you hesitate, Egwene Alvear?" One of the green sitters was on her feet, anger bright through her calm. "Shame, Elida. Show respect for the Amerlin Seat. Show respect for the mother." "Respect," Elida answered coldly, "can be lost as well as won. Well, Egwene, can it be you show your weakness, your unfitness for your office at last? Can it be you will not pronounce sentence on this man?" Rand tried to lift his head and failed. Egwene struggled to her feet, head spinning, trying to remember she was the Amerlin Seat, with the power to command all these women, screaming that she was a novice, that she did not belong here, that something was dreadfully wrong. "No," she said shakily. "No, I cannot. I will not." "She betrays herself." Elida's shout drowned out Egwene's attempt to speak. "She condemns herself out of her own mouth. Take her." As Egwene opened her mouth, Beldine moved beside her. Then the keeper's staff struck her head. Blackness. First there was pain in her head. There was something hard under her back and cold. Next came the voices. Murmurs. Is she still unconscious? It was a ras, a file on bone. Do not worry, a woman said from far, far away. She sounded uneasy, afraid, and trying not to show either. She will be dealt with before she knows what is happening to her. Then she is ours, to do with as we will. Perhaps we will give her to you for sport. After you make your own use of her. Of course. The distant voices moved further away. Her hand brushed against her leg, touched bare, pebbly flesh. She opened her eyes a crack. She was naked, bruised, lying on a rough wooden table in what seemed to be a disused storeroom. Splinters stuck her back. There was a metallic taste of blood in her mouth. A cluster of Aes Sedai stood to one side of the room, talking among themselves, voices low yet urgent. The pain in her head made thinking difficult, but it seemed important to count them. 13. Another group, black-cloaked and hooded men, joined the Aes Sedai, who seemed caught between cowering and trying to dominate with their presence. One of the men turned his head to look toward the table. The dead white face within the hood had no eyes. Egwene had no need to count the Murdral. She knew. 13 Murdral, and 13 Aes Sedai. Without another thought, she screamed in pure terror. Yet even in the midst of fear that tried to split her bones, she reached out for the true source, clawed desperately for Saidar. She's awake! She cannot be, not yet! Shield her! Quickly, quickly! Cut her off from the source! It's too late, she's too strong! Seize her! Hurry! Hands reached for her arms and legs, pasty pale hands like slugs under rocks, ordered by minds behind pale, eyeless faces. If those hands touched her flesh, she knew she would go mad. The power filled her. Flames burst from Murdral's skin, ripping through black cloth as if they were solid daggers of fire. Shrieking half-men crisped and burned like oiled paper. Fist-sized chunks of stone tore themselves free of the walls and whizzed across the room, producing shrieks and grunts as they thudded into flesh. The air stirred, shifted, howled into a whirlwind. Slowly, painfully, Egwene pushed herself off the table. The wind whipped her hair and made her stagger, but she continued to drive it as she stumbled toward the door. An Aes Sedai loomed in front of her, a woman bruised and bleeding, surrounded by the glow of the power. A woman with death in her dark eyes. Egwene's mind put a name to the face. Gildon, Elida's closest confidant, always whispering together in corners, closeting themselves in the night. Egwene's mouth tightened. Disdaining stones and wind, she balled up her fist and punched Gildon between the eyes as hard as she could. The red sister, the black sister, crumpled as if her bones had melted. Rubbing her knuckles, Egwene staggered out into the hall. Thank you, Baron, she thought. For doors shut against the wind, she channeled. Stones array shivered, cracked, settled against the wood. It would not hold them for long, but anything that slowed pursuit for even a minute was worth doing. Minutes might mean life. Gathering her strength, she forced herself to break into a run. It wobbled, but at least it was a run. She must find some clothes, she decided. A woman clothed had more authority than the same woman naked, and she was going to need every bit of authority. They would look for her first in her rooms, but she had a spare dress and shoes in her study, and another stole, and that lay not far off. It was unnerving, trotting through empty hallways. The White Tower no longer held the numbers it once had, but there was usually someone about. The loudest sound was the slap of her bare soles on the tiles. She hurried through the antechamber of her study to the inner room, and at last she found someone. Beldine was sitting on the floor, head in her hands, weeping. Egwene stopped warily as Beldine raised reddened eyes to meet hers. No glow of Saidar surrounded the keeper, but Egwene was still cautious and confident. She could not see her own glow, of course, but the power surging through her was enough, especially when added to her secret. Veldine scrubbed a hand across tear-stained cheeks. I had to. You must understand. I had to. They, they... She took a deep, shuddering breath. It all came out in a rush. 3 nights ago they took me while I slept and stilled me. Her voice rose to a near shriek. They stilled me! I cannot channel any longer! Light, Egwene breathed. The rush of Saidar cushioned her against the shock. The light help and comfort you, my daughter. Why didn't you tell me? I would have... She let it trail away, knowing there was nothing she could do. What would you have done? What? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. But they said they could give it back to me with the power of the Dark One. Her eyes squeezed shut, leaking tears. They hurt me, Mother, and they made me. Oh, Light, they hurt me. Elida told me they would make me whole again, make me able to channel again if I obeyed. That's why I had to. So Elida is Black Aja, Egwene said grimly. A narrow wardrobe stood against the wall, and in it hung a green silk dress, kept for when she had no time to return to her rooms. A striped stole hung beside the dress. She began to dress herself quickly. What have they done with Rand? Where have they taken him? Answer me, Veldine. Where is Rand al'Thor? Veldine huddled, lips trembling, eyes turned bleakly inward. But finally she roused herself enough to say, The Traitor's Court, Mother. They took him to the Traitor's Court. Shivers assaulted Egwene. Shivers of fear. Shivers of rage. Elida had not waited, not even an hour. The Traitor's Court was used for only 3 purposes: executions, the stilling of an Aes Sedai, or the gentling of a man who could channel. But all of the 3 took an order from the Amyrlin seat. So who wears the stole out there? Elida, she was sure. But how could she make them accept her so quickly, with me not tried, not sentenced? There cannot be another Amyrlin until I've been stripped of stole and staff, and they'll not find that easy to do. What? Rand! She started for the door. What can you do, Mother? Veldine cried. What can you do? It was not clear whether she meant for Rand or for herself. More than anyone suspects, Egwene said. I never held the oath rod, Veldine. Veldine's gasp followed her from the room. Egwene's memory still played hide-and-seek with her. She knew no woman could achieve the shawl and the ring without pledging the 3 oaths with the oath rod firmly in hand, the ter'angreal sealing her to keep those oaths as if they had been engraved on her bones at birth. No woman became Aes Sedai without being bound to them. Yet she knew that somehow, in some fashion she could not begin to dredge up, she had done just that. Her shoes clicked swiftly as she ran. At least she knew now why the halls were empty. Every Aes Sedai, except perhaps those she had left in the storeroom, every accepted, every novice, even all the servants, would be gathered in the Traitor's Court, according to custom, to watch the will of Tar Valon made fact. And the warders would be ringing the courtyard against the possibility that someone might try to free the man to be gentled. The remnants of where Amalasta's armies had attempted it at the end of what some called the War of the Second Dragon, just before Arthur Hawkman's rise had given Tar Valon other things to worry it, and so had Rowlin Darksbane's followers long years earlier. Whether Rand had any followers or not, she could not remember, but warders remembered such things and guarded against them. If Elida or another truly did wear the stole of the Amyrlin, the warders might well not admit her to the Traitor's Court. She knew she could force a way in. It would need to be done quickly. There was no point if Rand was gentled while she was still wrapping warders in air. Even warders would break if she loosed the lightnings on them and balefire, and broke the ground under their feet. Balefire, she wondered. But it would also do no good if she broke Tar Valon's power to save Rand. She had to save both. Well short of the ways that led to the traitor's court, she turned aside and climbed up stairs and ramps that grew narrower and tighter the higher she went, until she thrust open a trapdoor and climbed out onto a sloping tower roof, a roof of nearly white tiles. From there she could see across other roofs, past other towers, into the broad open well of the traitor's court. The court was crowded except for a cleared space in the middle. People filled the windows overlooking it, crowded the balconies and even the rooftops, but she could make out the lone man, small at that distance, swaying in his chains in the center of the cleared space. Ran. 12 Aes Sedai surrounded him, and another, who Egwene knew had to be wearing a 7-striped stole, even though she could not distinguish it, stood before Ran. Elida. The words she must be saying crept into Egwene's head. This man, abandoned of the light, has touched saidin, the male half of the true source. Thus do we hold him. Most abominably has this man channeled the one power, knowing that saidin is tainted by the Dark One, tainted for men's pride, tainted for men's sin. Thus do we chain him. Forcefully, Egwene pushed the rest of it out of her thoughts. 13 Aes Sedai, 12 sisters, and the Amerlin, the traditional number for gently, the same number as for... She rid herself of that, too. She had no time for anything but what she was there to do, if she could only manage to reason out how. At that distance, she thought she could manage to lift him with air, pick him right out of the circle of Aes Sedai and float him straight to her. Maybe. Even if she could find the strength, even if she did not drop him to his death halfway, it would be a slow process, with him a helpless target for archers, and the glow of saidar pointing out her own position for any Aes Sedai who looked. Any Myrddraal, for that matter. Light, she muttered. There's no other way short of starting a war inside the White Tower, and I may do that anyway. She gathered the power, separated skeins, directed flows. The way back will come but once. Be steadfast. It had been so long since she last heard those words that she gave a start, slipped on the smooth tiles, barely caught herself short of the edge. The ground lay 100 paces down. She looked over her shoulder. There on the tower top, tilted to sit flat against the sloping tiles, was a silver arch filled with a glowing light. The arch flickered and wavered. Streaks of angry red and yellow darted through the white light. The way back will come but once. Be steadfast. The archway thinned to transparency, grew solid again. Frantic, Egwene gazed toward the traitor's court. There had to be time. There had to be. All she needed was a few minutes, perhaps 10, and luck. Voices bored into her head. Not the disembodied, unknowable voice that warned her to be steadfast, but women's voices she almost believed she knew. Can't hold much longer. If she does not come out now, hold! Hold, burn you, or I'll gut you all like sturgeons. Going wild, Mother. We can't. The voices faded to a drone, the drone to silence, but the unknowable spoke again. The way back will come but once. Be steadfast. There is a price to be Aes Sedai. The Black Ajah waits. With a scream of rage, of loss, Egwene threw herself at the arch as it shimmered like a heat haze. She almost wished she would miss and plunge to her death. Light plucked her apart, fiber by fiber, sliced the fibers to hairs, split the hairs to wisps of nothing. All drifted apart on the light. Forever. Chapter 23. Sealed. Light pulled her apart, fiber by fiber, sliced the fibers to hairs that drifted apart, burning, drifting and burning, forever, forever. Egwene stepped out of the silver arch, cold and stiff with anger. She wanted the iciness of anger to counter the searing of memory. Her body remembered burning, but other memories scored and scorched more deeply. Anger cold as death. Is that all there is for me? She demanded. To abandon him again and again? To betray him, fail him again and again? Is that what there is for me? Suddenly she realized that all was not as it should be. The Amelin was there now, as Egwene had been taught she would be, and a shawled sister from each Adja, but they all stared at her worriedly. Two Aes Sedai now sat at each place around the ter'angreal, sweat running down their faces. The ter'angreal hummed, almost vibrated, and violent streaks of color tore the white light inside the arches. The glow of Saidar briefly enveloped Shiriam as she put a hand on Egwene's head, sending a new chill through her. She is well, the mistress of novices sounded relieved. She is unharmed, as if she had not expected it. Tension seemed to go out of the other Aes Sedai facing Egwene. Elida let out a long breath, then hurried away for the last chalice. Only the Aes Sedai around the ter'angreal. The hum had lessened, and the light began the flickering that signaled the ter'angreal was settling toward quiescence, but those Aes Sedai looked as if they were fighting it every inch of the way. What happened? Egwene asked. Be silent, Shiriam said, but gently. For now, be silent. You are well, that is the main thing, and we must complete the ceremony. Elida came, close to running, and handed the final silver chalice to the Amelin. Egwene hesitated only a moment before kneeling. What happened? The Amelin emptied the chalice slowly over Egwene's head. You are washed clean of Egwene Al'Vir from Emond's Field. You are washed clean of all ties that bind you to the world. You come to us washed clean in heart and soul. You are Egwene Al'Vir, accepted of the White Tower. The last drop splashed onto Egwene's hair. You are sealed to us now. The last words seemed to have a special meaning just between Egwene and the Amelin. The Amelin thrust the chalice at one of the other Aes Sedai and produced a gold ring in the shape of a serpent, biting its own tail. Despite herself, Egwene trembled as she raised her left hand, trembled again as the Amelin slipped the great serpent ring onto the third finger. When she became Aes Sedai, she could wear the ring on the finger she chose, or not at all if it was necessary to hide who she was, but the accepted wore it there. Unsmiling, the Amelin pulled her to her feet. Welcome, daughter, she said, kissing her cheek. Egwene was surprised to feel a thrill. Not child, but daughter. Always before she had been child. The Amelin kissed her other cheek. Welcome. Stepping back, the Amelin regarded her critically, but spoke to Shiriam. Get her dry and into some clothes, then be certain she is well. Certain, you understand? I am certain, Mother. Shiriam sounded surprised. You saw me delve her. The Amelin grunted, and her eyes shifted to the ter'angreal. I mean to know what went wrong tonight. She strode away in the direction of her glare, skirts swaying purposefully. Most of the other Aes Sedai joined her around the ter'angreal, now only a silver structure of arches on a ring. The mother is worried about you, Shiriam said as she drew Egwene to one side, to where there was a thick towel for her hair, and another for the rest of her. How much reason did she have? Egwene asked. The Amelin wants nothing to happen to her hound till the deer is pulled down. Shiriam did not answer. She merely frowned slightly, then waited until Egwene was dry before handing her a white dress banded at the bottom with 7 rings. She slipped into that dress with the flash of disappointment. She was one of the accepted, with the ring on her finger and the bands on her dress. Why don't I feel any different? Elida came over, her arms filled with Egwene's novice dress and shoes, her belt and pouch, and the papers Varen had given her. In Elida's hands. Egwene made herself wait for the Aes Sedai to hand the bundle to her rather than snatch them away. Thank you, Aes Sedai. She tried to eye the papers surreptitiously. She could not tell if they had been disturbed. The string was still tied. How would I know if she's read all of them? Squeezing her pouch under cover of the novice dress, she felt the peculiar ring, the ter'angreal, inside. At least that's still here. Like she could have taken that, and I don't know that I would have minded. Yes, I think I would. Elida's face was as cold as her voice. I did not want you to be brought forward tonight. Not because I feared what happened. No one could foresee that. But because of what you are, a wilder. Egwene tried to protest, but Elida kept on, as implacable as a mountain glacier. Oh, I know you learned to channel under Aes Sedai teaching, but you are still a wilder. A wilder in spirit, a wilder in ways. You have vast potential, else you would never have survived in there tonight. But potential changes nothing. I do not believe you will ever be part of the White Tower, not in the way the rest of us are, no matter on which finger you wear your ring. It would have been better for you had you settled for learning enough to stay alive and gone back to your sleepy village. Far better. Turning on her heel, she stalked away, out of the chamber. If she isn't Black Aja, Egwene thought sourly, she's the next thing to it. Aloud, she muttered to Shiriam, "You could have said something. You could have helped me." "I would have helped a novice, child," Shiriam replied calmly, and Egwene winced. She was back to child again. "I try to protect novices where they need it, since they cannot protect themselves. You are accepted now. It is time for you to learn to protect yourself." Egwene studied Shiriam's eyes, wondering if she had imagined an emphasis on that last sentence. Shiriam had had as much opportunity as Elida to read the list of names, to decide that Egwene was mixed in with the Black Aja. Like, you're becoming suspicious of everybody. Better that than dead, captured by 13 of them, and hastily she stopped that line of thought. She did not want it in her head. "Shiriam, what did happen tonight?" she asked. "And don't put me off." Shiriam's eyebrows rose almost to her scalp, it seemed, and she hastily amended her question. "Shiriam Sedai, I mean." "Forgive me, Shiriam Sedai." "Remember, you aren't Aes Sedai yet, child." Despite the steel in her voice, a smile touched Shiriam's lips, yet it vanished as she went on. "I do not know what happened, except that I very much fear you almost died. Who knows what happens to those who do not come out of a ter'angreal?" Alana said as she joined them. The Green Sister was known for her temper and her sense of humor, and some said she could flash from one to the other and back again before you could blink. But the look she gave Egwene was almost diffident. "Child, I should have stopped this when I had the chance, when I first noticed that reverberation. It came back. That is what happened. It came back 1,000-fold, 10,000. The ter'angreal almost seemed to be trying to shut off the flow from Saidar, or melt itself through the floor. You have my apologies, though words are not enough. Not for what almost happened to you. I say this, and by the first oath you know it is true. To show my feelings, I will ask the mother to let me share your time in the kitchens. And yes, your visit to Shiriam, too. Had I done as I should, you would not have been in danger of your life, and I will atone for it." Shiriam's laugh was scandalized. "She will never allow that, Alana. A sister in the kitchens, much less. It is unheard of. It's impossible. You did what you believed right. There is no fault to you." "It was not your fault, Alana Sedai," Egwene said. "Why is Alana doing this? Unless maybe to convince me she didn't have anything to do with whatever went wrong. And maybe so she can keep an eye on me all the time." It was that image, a proud Aes Sedai up to her elbows in greasy pots 3 times a day just to watch someone, that convinced her she was letting her imagination run away with her. But it was also unthinkable that Alana should do as she said she would. In any case, the Green Sisters certainly had had no chance to see the list of names while tending the ter'angreal. But if Nynaeve is right, she wouldn't need to see those names to want to kill me if she is Black Aja. Stop that. Really, it wasn't. Had I done as I should, Alana maintained, it would never have happened. The only time I have ever seen anything like it was once years ago when we tried to use a ter'angreal in the same room with another that may have been some way related to it. It is extremely rare to find 2 such as that. The pair of them melted, and every sister within 100 paces had such a headache for a week that she couldn't channel a spark. What's the matter, child? Egwene's hand had tightened around her pouch, till the twisted stone ring impressed itself on her palm through the thick cloth. Is it warm? I did it myself. Nothing, Alana, said I. I said I, you did nothing wrong. You have no reason to share my punishments. None at all. None. A bit vehement, Shiriam observed. But
I
truly,
still dab now.
Alana only shook her head. I said I, Egwene said slowly. What does it mean to be green, Aja? Shiriam's eyes opened wider with amusement, and Alana grinned openly. Just with the ring on your finger, the green sister said, and already trying to decide which Aja to choose? First, you must love men. I don't mean be in love with them, but love them. Not like a blue, who merely likes men so long as they share her causes and do not get in her way, and certainly not like a red, who despises them as if every one of them were responsible for the breaking. Alviarin, the white sister who had come with the Amelin, gave them a cool look and moved on. And not like a white, Alana said with a laugh, who has no room in her life for any passions at all. That was not what I meant, Alana said I want to know what it means to be a green sister. She was not sure Alana would understand because she was not certain she herself understood what she wanted to know, but Alana nodded slowly as if she did. Browns seek knowledge, blues meddling causes, and whites consider the questions of truth with implacable logic. We all do some of it all, of course, but to be a green means to stand ready. A note of pride entered Alana's voice. In the Trolloc Wars, we were often called the Battle Aja. All Aes Sedai helped where and when they could, but the Green Aja alone was always with the armies in almost every battle. We were the counter to the Dreadlords, the Battle Aja. And now we stand ready for the Trollocs to come south again, for Tarmon Gaiden, the last battle. We will be there.
Light I'm trying
that is
out.
What it means to
help
be
out with the lighting in here.
Thank you, Aes Sedai, Egwene said.
Trying different
Or what I will be. Like I wish I knew if it was real, if it had anything at all to do with here and now. The Amelin joined them, and they swept deep curtsies to her. Are you well, daughter? She asked Egwene. Her eyes flicked to the corner of the papers sticking out from under the novice press in Egwene's hands, then back to Egwene's face immediately. I will know the why of what occurred tonight before I am done. Egwene's cheeks reddened. I am well, Mother. Alana surprised her by asking the Amelin just what she had said she would. I never heard of such a thing, the Amelin barked. The owner doesn't muck out with the bilge boys, even if he has run the boat on a mudflat. She glanced at Egwene, and worry tightened her eyes, and anger. I share your concern, Alana. Whatever this child has done, it did not deserve that. Very well. If it will assuage your feelings, you may visit Shiriam. But it is to be strictly between you two. I'll not have Aes Sedai held up to ridicule, even inside the tower. Egwene opened her mouth to confess all and let them take the ring. I don't want the bloody thing, really. But Alana forestalled her. And Mother? Do not be ridiculous, daughter. The Amelin was angry and sounded more so by the word. You'd be a laughing stock inside the day, except for those who decided you were mad. And don't think it would not follow you. Tales like that have a way of traveling. You would find stories told of the scullion Aes Sedai from Tyr to Maradon, and that would reflect on every sister. No. If you need to rid yourself of some feeling of guilt and cannot handle it as a grown woman would, very well. I have told you that you may visit Shiriam. Accompany her tonight when you leave here. That will give you enough to decide if it was of any help. And tomorrow you can start finding out what went wrong here tonight. Yes, Mother. Alana's voice was perfectly neutral. The desire to confess had died in Egwene. Alana had shown only one brief flash of disappointment when she realized the Amelin would not allow her to join Egwene in the kitchens. She doesn't want to be punished any more than any sensible person does. She did want an excuse to be in my company. Light.
Give it
she
a
couldn't
sec
have
before we
deliberately
do
caused the Turon Grial to go wild. I did that. Can she be Black Aja? Wrapped in thought, Egwene heard her throat cleared. Then again, more roughly. Her eyes focused. The Amelin was staring right into her, and when she spoke, she bit off each word. Since you seem to be asleep, standing up, child, I suggest you go to bed. For one instant her glance flashed to the nearly concealed papers in Egwene's hands. You have much work to do tomorrow and for many days thereafter. Her eyes held Egwene's a moment longer, and then she was striding away before any of them could curtsy. Shiriam rounded on Alana as soon as the Awalan was out of earshot. The green Aes Sedai glowered and took it in silence. You are
This
mad,
one definitely hits a lot better than the
a
other one.
fool, and doubly a fool if you think I will go lightly on you just because we were novices together. Are you taken by the dragon to... Suddenly, Shiriam became aware of Egwene, and the target of her anger shifted. Did I not hear the Amaransi order you to your bed accepted? If you breathe a word of this, you will become you in a field to manure the ground, and I will see you in my study in the morning when the bell rings first and not one breath later. Now go! Egwene went, her head spinning. Is there anybody I can trust? The Amalin? She sent us off chasing 13 of the Black Ajah, and forgot to mention that 13 is just the number needed to turn a woman who can channel to the shadow against her will. Who can I trust? She did not want to be alone, could not stand the thought of it, and so she hurried to the Accepted's quarters, thinking that tomorrow she would be moving there herself, and immediately after knocking, pushed open Nynaeve's door. She could trust her with anything, her and Elaine. But Nynaeve was seated in one of the two chairs, with Elaine's head buried in her lap. Elaine's shoulders shook to the sound of weeping, the softer weeping that comes after no energy is left for deeper sobs, but the emotion still burns. Dampness shone on Nynaeve's cheeks, too. The great serpent gleaming on her hand, smoothing Elaine's hair, matched the ring on the hand Elaine used to clutch at Nynaeve's skirt. Elaine lifted a face red and swollen from long crying, sniffing through her sobs when she saw Egwene. I could not be that awful Egwene. I just couldn't. The accident with the Turangrial, Egwene's fear that someone might have read the papers Varen had given her, her suspicions of everyone in that chamber, all these had been terrible, but they had buffered her in a rough, ungentle way from what had happened inside the Turangrial. They had come from the outside. The other was innocent. Elaine's words stripped the buffer away, and what was inside hit Egwene as if the ceiling had collapsed. Rand, her husband, and Joya, her baby. Rand pinned and begging her to kill him. Rand chained to be gentle. Before she was aware of moving, she was on her knees beside Elaine, all the tears that should have fallen earlier coming out in a flood. I couldn't help him, Nynaeve, she sobbed. I just left him there. Nynaeve flinched as if struck, but the next moment her arms were around both Egwene and Elaine, hugging them, rocking them. Hush, she crooned softly. It eases with time. It eases a little. One day we will make them pay our price. Hush, hush.
Chapter 24. Scouting and Discoveries.
Start round one and set.
Sunlight
And the
through
one I'm
carved
gonna be
shutters
smoking is
streaking
this,
across the bed woke Matt. For a moment, he only lay there.
White truffle
He had not
X.
reasoned out any plan for escaping
Black
from
lime
Fallen before
preserve.
sleep had overtaken him, but neither had he given up. Too much memory still lay covered with fog, but he would not give up. Two serving women came bustling with hot water and a tray heavy with food, laughing and telling him how much better he looked already, and how soon he would be back on his feet if he did what the Aes Sedai told him. He answered them curtly, trying not to sound bitter. I didn't think I needed to go alone. His stomach rumbled at the smells from the tray. When they left, he tossed aside his blanket and hopped out of bed, pausing only to stuff half a slice of ham into his mouth before pouring out water to wash and shave. Staring into the mirror above the washstand, he paused in lathering his face. He did look better. His cheeks were still hollow, but not quite as hollow as they had been. The dark circles had vanished from under his eyes, which no longer seemed set so deep in his head. It was as if every bite he had eaten the night before had gone into putting meat on his bones. He even felt stronger. At this rate, he muttered, I will be gone before they know it. But he was still surprised when, after shaving, he sat down and consumed every scrap of ham, turnip, and pear on the tray. He was sure they expected him to climb back into bed once he had eaten, but instead he dressed. Stamping his feet to settle them in his boots, he eyed his spare clothes and decided to leave them for now. I have to know what I'm doing first. And if I leave them, he tucked the dice cups into his pouch. With those, he could get all the clothes he needed. Opening the door, he peeked out. More doors, paneled in pale golden wood, lined the wall, with colorful tapestries between, and a runner of blue carpet ran down the white tiled floor. But there was no one out there, no guard. He tossed his cloak over one shoulder and hurried out. Now to find a way outside. It took some little wandering, downstairs and along corridors and across open courts, before he found what he wanted. A doorway to the outside, and he saw people before then. Serving women and white-clad novices hurrying about their chores, the novices running even harder than the servants. A handful of roughly dressed male servants carrying large chests and other heavy loads, accepted in their banded dresses, even a few Aes Sedai. The Aes Sedai did not seem to notice him as they strode along, intent on whatever purpose, or else they gave him no more than a passing glance. His were country clothes, but well made. He did not look a vagabond, and the serving men showed that men were allowed in this part of the tower. He suspected they might take him for another servant, and that was just as well with him, so long as no one asked him to lift anything. He did feel some regret that none of the women he saw was Egwene or Nynaeve, or even Elaine. She's pretty, even if she does have her nose in the air half the time. And she could tell me how to find Egwene and Melissa. I cannot go without saying goodbye. Right, I don't suppose one of them would turn me in, just because they are becoming Aes Sedai themselves. Burn me for a fool. They'd never do that. Anyway, I will risk it. But once out of doors, under a bright morning sky with only a few drifting white clouds, he put the women from his mind for the time. He was looking across a wide flagstoned yard with a plain stone fountain in the middle, and a barracks on the other side that was made of gray stone. It looked almost like a huge boulder among the few trees growing out of rimmed holes in the flagstones close by. Guardsmen in their shirt sleeves sat in front of the long, low building, tending weapons and armor and harness. Guardsmen were what he wanted now. He sauntered across the yard and watched the soldiers as if he had nothing better to do. As they worked, they talked and laughed among themselves, like men after the harvest. Now and again, one of them looked curiously at Matt as he strolled among them, but none challenged his right to be there. From time to time, he asked a casual question, and finally he got the answer he sought. "Bridge guard," said a stocky, dark-haired man, no more than 5 years older than Matt. His words had a heavy Illianer accent. Young he might have been, but a thin white scar crossed his left cheek, and the hands oiling his sword moved with familiarity and confidence. He squinted up at Matt before returning to his task. "I do be a bridge guard, and back there again this evening." "Why do you ask?" "I was just wondering what conditions were like on the other side of the river. I might as well find that out, too." "Good for traveling? It can't be muddy, unless you have had more rain than I know about." "Which side of the river?" the guardsman asked placidly. His eyes did not lift from the oiled rag he was running along his blade. East. The east side. No mud. White cloaks." The man leaned to one side to spit, but his voice did not change. "White cloaks do be poking their noses into every village for 10 miles. They've not hurt anyone yet, but them just being there do upset the folk. Fortune prick me if I do not think they wish to provoke us. They do look as if they would attack if they could. No good for anyone who do want to travel." "What about west, then?" "The same." The guardsman raised his eyes to Matt's. "But you will no be crossing, lad, east or west. Your name do be met from Cawthon, where fortune abandoned me. Last night a sister herself in person did come to the bridge where I did stand guard. She did drill your features at us till each could speak them back to her. I guessed, she did say, And no to be harmed, but no to be allowed out
Hell
of the
yeah,
city
happy
either,
birthday.
if you must be tied hand and foot to keep you from
I
it.
hope it's a good one.
His eyes narrowed. Is it that you did steal something from them? He asked doubtfully. You do not have the look of those the sisters do guessed. I didn't steal anything, Matt said indignantly. Burke, I didn't even get a chance to work around to it easy. They must all know me. I'm no thief. No, it is no that I do see in your face. No thievery. But you do have the look of the fellow who did try to sell me the Horn of Valir 3 days gone. So he did claim it did be, all bent and battered as it did be. Do you have a Horn of Valir to sell? Or mayhap, do it be the dragon's sword? Matt gave a jump at the mention of the horn, but he managed to keep his voice level. I was sick. Others of the guardsmen were looking at him now. Why, they'll all know I'm not supposed to leave now. He forced a laugh. The sisters healed me. Some of the guardsmen frowned at him. Perhaps they thought other men should show more respect than to call the Aes Sedai sisters. I guess the Aes Sedai don't want me to go before I have all my strength back. He tried willing the men, all of those watching him now, to accept that. Just a man who was healed. Nothing more. No reason to trouble yourself about him any further. The Illiana nodded. You do have the look of sickness in your face, too. Perhaps that do be the reason. But never did I hear of so much effort to keep one sick man in the city. That's the reason, Matt said firmly. They were all still looking at him. Well, I need to be going. They said I have to take walks. Lots of long walks. To build up strength, you know. He felt their eyes following him as he left, and he scowled. He had simply meant to find out how well his description had been passed around. If only the officers among the bridge guards had had it, he might have been able to slip by. He'd always been good at slipping into places unseen. And out. It was a talent you developed when your mother always suspected you were up to some mischief, and you had 4 sisters to tell on you. And now I've made sure half a barracks full of guardsmen will know me. Blood and ashes. Much of the tower grounds were gardens full of trees, leatherleaf and paper bark and elms, and he soon found himself walking along a wide, twisting, graveled path. He could have led through countryside if not for the towers visible over the treetops, and the white bulk of the tower itself behind him, but pressing on him as if he carried it on his shoulders. If there were ways out of the tower grounds that were not watched, this seemed the place to find them, if they existed. A girl in novice white appeared ahead on the path, striding purposefully toward him. Wrapped in her own thoughts, she did not see him at first. When she came close enough for him to make out her big dark eyes and the way her hair was braided, he grinned suddenly. He knew this girl, memory drifting up from shrouded depths, though he would never have expected to find her here. He had never expected to see her again at all. He grinned to himself. Good luck to balance that. As he remembered, she had quite an eye for the boys. Els, he called to her. Els Grinwell. You remember me, don't you? Matt Coffin. A friend and I visited your father's farm. Remember? Have you decided to become Aes Sedai then? She stopped short, staring at him. What are you doing up and out? She said coldly. You know about that, do you? Closer to her, but she stepped back in the distance. He stopped. It's not catching. I was healed, Els. Those large dark eyes seemed more knowing than he remembered, and not nearly so warm, but he supposed studying to be an Aes Sedai could do that. What's the matter, Els?
Ozzy's all
You look like you don't
relaxed.
know.
What?
I know you, she said. Her manner was not as he remembered either. He thought she could give Elaine lessons now. I have work to be about. Let me by. He grimaced. The path was broad enough for 6 to walk abreast without crowding. I told you it isn't catching. Let me by. Muttering to himself, he stepped to one edge of the gravel. She went past him, along the other side, watching to make sure he did not come closer. Once by, she quickened her steps, glancing over her shoulder at him until she was out of sight around a bend. Wanted to make sure I didn't follow her, he thought sourly. First the guardsmen and now Els. My luck. is not in today. He started off again and soon heard a ferocious clatter from one side ahead, like dozens of sticks being beat together. Curious, he turned off toward it into the trees. A little way brought him to a large expanse of bare ground, the earth beaten hard, at least 50 paces across and nearly twice as long. At intervals around it, under the trees, stood wooden stands holding quarterstaffs, and practice swords made of strips of wood bound loosely together, and a few real swords and axes and spears. Spaced across the open ground, pairs of men, most stripped to the waist, flailed at each other with more practice swords. Some moved so smoothly it almost seemed they danced with one another, flowing from stance to stance, stroke to counterstroke, in continuous motion. There was nothing quickly apparent aside from skill to mark them from the others, but Matt was sure he was watching warders. Those who did not move so smoothly were all younger, each pair under the watchful eyes of an older man who seemed to radiate a dangerous grace even standing still. Warders and students, Matt decided. He was not the only audience. Not 10 paces from him, half a dozen women with ageless Aes Sedai faces and as many more in the banded white dresses of the accepted stood watching one pair of students, bare to the waist and slick with sweat, under the guidance of a warder, shaped much like a block of stone. The warder used a short-stemmed pipe in one hand, trailing tobacco smoke, to direct his pupils. Sitting down cross-legged under a leather leaf, Matt rooted 3 large pebbles out of the ground and began to juggle them idly. He did not feel weak exactly, but it was good to sit. If there was a way out of the tower grounds, it would not go away while he took a short rest. Before he had been there 5 minutes, he knew who it was the Aes Sedai and accepted were watching. One of the blocky warder's pupils was a tall, lithe young man who moved like a cat, and almost as pretty as a girl, Matt thought wryly. Every woman was staring at the tall fellow with sparkling eyes, even the Aes Sedai. The tall man handled his practice sword almost as deftly as the warders, now and then earning an approving, gravelly comment from his teacher. It was not that his opponent, a youth more Matt's age with red gold hair, was unskilled. Far from it, as much as Matt could see, though he had never claimed to know anything about swords. The golden-haired man met every lightning attack, turning it away before the bound strips could strike him, and even launched an occasional attack of his own. But the handsome fellow countered those attacks and flowed back into his zone in the space of a heartbeat. Matt shifted the pebbles to one hand, but kept them spinning in the air. He did not think he would care to face either of them, certainly not with a sword. "Break!" The warder's voice sounded like rocks emptying out of a bucket. Chests heaved. The 2 men let their practice swords fall to their sides. Sweat matted their hair. "You can rest till I finish my pipe, but rest fast. I'm almost in the double." Now that they had stopped dancing, Matt got a good look at the youth with the red gold hair and let the pebbles drop. "Burn me. I'll bet my whole purse that's a
There you go. That's
The
his
other
little
one's
bed
gone.
that he sleeps
I'll eat
in
my
and chill.
boots." On the journey from Tillman Head, it had seemed after Lane's conversation had
And
been
tried
that
to do
Gowan's
the live.
virtues
Well, I'm
and
doing the
Galad's
lives
vices.
like that, but afterwards, and
Oh, Gowan had some vices according
I'll
to
take
Elaine,
him off that
but
little
they were
bed and
small.
sit him on a pillow until I
Matt, they
get
sounded
up.
like the sort of things no one
ready
but
to
a
lay in
sister would
bed.
consider vices at all. As for
And
Galad,
then
once
he'll
Elaine
go
was pinned down,
right
he
underneath
said
the
like what
blanket
every
and
mother
curl
said
up
she
right
wanted her
next to
son to
me.
be. Matt did not think he wanted to spend much time in Galad's company. Egwene blushed whenever Galad was mentioned, though she seemed to think no one noticed. A ripple seemed to pass through the watching women when Gowan and Galad stopped, and they appeared on the point of stepping forward almost as one. But Gowan caught sight of Matt, said something quietly to Galad, and the 2 of them walked by the women. The Aes Sedai and accepted turned to follow with their eyes. Matt scrambled to his feet as the pair approached. "You are Matt Cotham, are you not?" Gowan said with a grin. "I was sure I recognized you from Egwene's description, and Elaine's. I understand you are sick. Are you better now?" "I'm fine," Matt said. He wondered if he was supposed to call Gowan my lord, or something of the sort. He had refused to call Elaine my lady, not that she had demanded it actually, and he decided he would not do her brother better. "Did you come to the practice yard to learn the sword?" Galad asked. Matt shook his head. "I was only out walking. I don't know much about swords. I think I'll put my trust in a good bow or a good quarterstaff. I know how to use those. If you spend much time around Nynaeve, Galad said, you'll need bow, quarterstaff, and sword to protect yourself. And I don't know whether that would be enough. Gowan looked at him wonderingly. Galad, you just very nearly made a joke. I do have a sense of humor, Gowan, Galad said with a frown. You only think I do not because I do not care to mock people. With a shake of his head, Gowan turned back to Matt. You should learn something of the sword. Everyone can do with that sort of knowledge these days. Your friend, Randolph Thor, carried a most unusual sword. What do you hear of him? I haven't seen Rand in a long time, Matt said quickly. Just for a moment, when he had mentioned Rand, Gowan's look had gained intensity. Why? Does he know about Rand? He couldn't. If he did, he'd be denouncing me for a dark friend just for being Rand's friend. But he knows something. Swords aren't the be-all and end-all, you know. I could do fairly well against either of you, I think, if you had a sword and I had my quarterstaff. Gowan's cough was obviously meant to swallow a laugh. Much too politely, he said, You must be very good. Galad's face was frankly disbelieving. Perhaps it was that they both clearly thought he was making a wild boast. Perhaps it was because he had mishandled questioning the guardsmen. Perhaps it was because Els, who had such an eye for the boys, wanted nothing to do with him. All those women were staring at Galad like cats watching a jug of cream. Aes Sedai and accepted or not, they were still women. All these explanations ran through Matt's head, but he rejected them angrily, especially the last. He was going to do it because it would be fun, and it might earn some coin. His luck would not even have to be back. I will wager, he said, 2 silver marks to 2 from each of you that I can beat both of you at once, just the way I said. You can't have fairer odds than that. There are 2 of you and 1 of me, so 2 to 1 are fair odds. He almost laughed aloud at the consternation on their faces. Matt, Gowan said, there's no need to make wagers. You have been sick. Perhaps we will try this sometime when you are stronger. It would be far from a fair wager, Galad said. I'll not take your wager now or later. You are from the same village as Egwene, are you not? I would not have her angry with me. What does she have to do with it? Thump me once with one of your swords, and I will hand over a silver mark to each of you. If I thump you till you quit, you will give me 2 each. Don't you think you can do it? This is ridiculous, Galad said. You would have no chance against 1 trained swordsman, let alone 2. I'll not take such advantage. Do you think that? Asked a gravel voice. The blocky warder joined them, thick black eyebrows pulled down in a scowl. You think you 2 are good enough with your swords to take a boy with a stick? It would not be fair, Hamar Gaidin, Galad said. He has been sick, Gowan added. There is no need for this. To the yard, Hamar grated, with a jerk of his head back over his shoulder. Galad and Gowan gave Matt regretful looks, then obeyed. The warder eyed Matt up and down doubtfully. Are you sure you're up to this, lad? Now I take a close look at you, you ought to be in a sick bed. I'm already out of one, Matt said, and I'm up to it. I have to be. I don't want to lose my 2 marks. Hamar's heavy brows rose in surprise. You mean to hold to that wager, lad? I need the money, Matt laughed. His laughter cut off abruptly as he turned toward the nearest stand that held quarterstaffs, and his knees almost buckled. He stiffened them so quickly he thought anyone who noticed would think he had just stumbled. At the stand, he took his time choosing out a staff, nearly 2 inches thick and almost a foot taller than he was. I have to win this. I opened my fool mouth, and now I have to win. I can't afford to lose those 2 marks. Without those to build on, it will take forever to win the money I need. When he turned back, the quarterstaff in both hands before him, Gowan and Galad were already waiting out where they had been practicing. I have to win. Luck, he muttered. Time to toss the dice. Hamar gave him an odd look. You speak the old tongue, lad. Matt stared back at him for a moment, not speaking. He felt cold to the stone. With an effort, he made his feet start out onto the practice yard. "Remember the wager," he said loudly. "2 silver marks from each of you against 2 from me." A buzz rose from the accepted as they realized what was happening. The Aes Sedai watched in silence, disapproving silence. Gawain and Galad split apart, one to either side of him, keeping their distance, neither with his sword more than half raised. "No wager," Gawain said. "There's no wager." At the same time, Galad said, "I'll not take your money like this." "I mean to take yours," Matt said. "Done," Amar
Y'all
roared.
ain't gotta be
"If
scared.
they have not the nerve to cover your wager, lad, I'll pay the silver myself." "Very well," Gawain said. "If you insist on it, done." Galad hesitated a moment more before growling, "Done, then. Let us put an end to this farce." The moment's warning was all Matt needed. As Galad rushed at him, he slid his hands along the quarterstaff and pivoted. The end of the staff thudded into the tall man's ribs, bringing a grunt and a stumble. Matt let the staff bounce off Galad and spun, carrying it around just as Gawain came within range. The staff dipped, darted under Gawain's practice sword, and clipped his ankle out from under him. As Gawain fell, Matt completed the spin in time to catch Galad across his upraised wrist, sending his practice sword flying. As if his wrist did not pain him at all, Galad threw himself into a smooth, rolling dive and came up with his sword in both hands. Ignoring him for a moment, Matt half turned, twisting his wrists to whip the length of the staff back beside him. Gawain, just starting to rise, took the blow on the side of the head with a loud thump, only partly softened by the patting of hair. He went down in a heap. Matt was only vaguely aware of an Aes Sedai rushing out to tend Elaine's fallen brother. "I hope he's all right. He should be. I've hit myself harder than that falling off a fence." He still had Galad to deal with, and from the way Galad was poised in the balls of his feet, sword raised precisely, he had begun to take Matt seriously. Matt's legs chose that moment to tremble. "I can't weaken now." But he could feel it creeping back in, the wobbly feeling, the hunger as if he had not eaten for days. "If I wait for him to come to me, I'll fall on my face." It was hard to keep his knees straight as he started forward. "Luck, stay with me." From the first blow, he knew that luck or skill or whatever had brought him this far was still there. Galad managed to turn that one with a sharp clack, and the next, and the next, and the next. But strain stiffened his face. That smooth swordsman, almost as good as the warders, fought with every ounce of his skill to keep Matt's staff from him. He did not attack. It was all he could do to defend. He moved continually to the side, trying not to be forced back, and Matt pressed him, staff a blur. And Galad stepped back again, wooden blade a thin shield against the quarterstaff. Hunger gnawed at Matt as if he had swallowed weasels. Sweat rolled down into his eyes, and his strength began to fade as if it leached out with the sweat. "Not yet. I can't fall yet. I have to win. Now." With a roar, he threw all his reserves into one last surge. The quarterstaff flickered past Galad's sword and in quick succession struck knee, wrist, and ribs, and finally thrust into Galad's stomach like a spear. With a groan, Galad folded over, fighting not to fall. The staff quivered in Matt's hands on the point of a final crushing thrust to the throat. Galad sank to the ground. Matt almost dropped the quarterstaff when he realized what he had been about to do. Win, not kill. What was I thinking? Reflexively, he grounded the butt of the staff, and as soon as he did, he had to clutch at it to hold himself erect. Hunger hollowed him like a knife reaming marrow from a bone. Suddenly he realized that not only the Aes Sedai and Accepted were watching. All practice, all learning had stopped. Warders and students alike stood watching him. Amar moved to stand beside Galad, still groaning on the ground and trying to push himself up. The warder raised his voice to shout, "Who was the greatest blade master of all time?" From the throats of dozens of students came a massed bellow. "Jerome, guiding." "Yes," Amar said, turning to make sure all. "During his lifetime, Jerome fought over 10,000 times in battle in single combat. He was defeated once by a farmer with a quarterstaff.
He underestimated Matt.
Remember what you just saw." He lowered his eyes to Galad and lowered his voice as well. If you cannot get up by now, lad, it is finished. He raised a hand, and the Aes Sedai and Accepted rushed to surround Galad. Matt slid down the staff to his knees. None of the Aes Sedai even glanced his way. One of the Accepted did, a plump girl who might have liked to ask for a dance if she were not going to be an Aes Sedai. She frowned at him, sniffed, and turned back to peering at what the Aes Sedai were doing around Galad. Gowan was on his feet, Matt noted with relief. He pulled himself up as Gowan came over. Mustn't let them know. I'll never get out of here if they decide to nurse me from sunup to sunup. Blood darkened the red gold hair on the side of Gowan's head, but there was neither cut nor bruise apparent. He pushed 2 silver marks into Matt's hand with a dry, I think I will listen next time. He noticed Matt's glance, touched his head. They healed it, but it was not bad. Elaine has given me worse more than once. You are good with that. Not as good as my Da. He's won the quarterstaff at Beltane every year as long as I can remember. Except once or twice when Ransda did. That interested look came back into Gowan's eyes, and Matt wished he had never mentioned Tam Thor. The Aes Sedai and the Accepted were all still clustered around Galad. I must have hurt him badly. I did not mean to do that. Gowan glanced that way. There was nothing to be seen but 2 rings of women's backs, Accepted's white dresses making the outer ring as they peered over the shoulders of crouching Aes Sedai, and laughed. You did not kill him. I heard him groaning, so he should be on his feet by now. But they are not going to let this chance pass. Now they have their hands on him. Right, 4 of them are green Aja. Matt gave him a confused look. Green Aja? What does that have to do with anything? And Gowan shook his head. It doesn't matter. Just rest assured that the worst Galad has to worry about is finding himself watered to a green Aes Sedai before his head clears. He laughed. No, they would not do that. But I will wager you those 2 marks of mine in your hand that some of them wish they could. Not your marks, Matt said, shoving them in his coat pocket. Mine. The explanation had made little sense to him, except that Galad was well. All he knew of what passed between Waters and Aes Sedai were the pieces he remembered of Lan and Moraine. And there was nothing there like what Gowan seemed to be suggesting. Do you think they'd mind if I collected my wager from him? They very likely would, Amar said dryly as he joined them. You are not very popular with those particular Aes Sedai right now. He snorted. You'd think even green Aes Sedai would be better than girls just loose from their mother's apron strings. He isn't that good looking. He is not, Matt agreed. Gowan grinned at both of them until Hammer glared at him. Here, the warder said, pushing 2 more silver coins into Matt's hand. I will collect from Galad later. Where are you from, lad? Manethrin. Matt froze when he heard the name come out of his mouth. I mean, I'm from the 2 rivers. I've heard too many old stories. They just looked at him without saying anything. I think I will go back and see if I can find something to eat. Not even the mid-morning bell had rung yet, but they nodded as if it made sense. He kept the quarterstaff, no one had told him to put it back, and walked slowly until the trees hid him from the practice yard. When they did, he leaned on the staff as though it were the only thing holding him up. He was not sure it was not. He thought that if he parted his coat, he could see a hole where his stomach should have been, a hole growing larger as it pulled the rest of him in. But he hardly thought of hunger. He kept hearing voices in his head. You speak the old tongue, lad? Manethrin. It made him shiver. Why, help me. I keep digging myself deeper. I have to get out of here, but how? He hobbled back toward the tower proper like an old man.
Chapter 25. Questions. Egwene lay across Nynaeve's bed, chin in her hands, watching Nynaeve pace back and forth. Elaine sprawled in front of the fireplace, which was still full of the ashes of last night's fire. Yet again, Elaine was studying the list of names Varen had produced, patiently reading every word one more time. The other pages, the list of Turangrial, sat on the table. After one shocked reading, they had not discussed that one further, though they had talked of everything else. And argued, too. Egwene stifled a yawn. It was only the middle of the morning, but none of them had gotten much sleep. They had had to be up early, for the kitchens and breakfast. For other things that she refused to think about. The little sleep she herself had managed had been filled with unpleasant dreams. Maybe Anaya could help me understand them, those that need understanding. But what if she is Black Aja? After staring at every woman in that chamber last night, wondering which was Black Aja, she was finding trust for anyone but her two companions hard to come by. But she did wish she had some way of interpreting those dreams. The nightmares about what had happened inside the Turangrial last night were easy enough to understand, though they had made her wake up weeping. She had dreamed of the Shan-Chan, too, of women in dresses with lightning bolts woven on their breasts, collaring a long line of women who wore great serpent rings, forcing them to call lightning against the White Tower. That had started her awake in a cold sweat, but that had to be just a nightmare, too. And the dream about white cloaks binding her father's hands. A nightmare brought on by homesickness, she supposed. But the others. She glanced at the other two women again. Elaine was still reading, Nynaeve still paced with that steady tread. There had been a dream of Rand, reaching for a sword that seemed to be made of crystal, never seeing the fine net dropping over him, and one of him kneeling in a chamber where a parched wind blew dust across the floor, and creatures like the one on the dragon banner, but much smaller, floated on that wind and settled into his skin. There had been a dream of him walking down into a great hole in a black mountain, a hole filled with a reddish glare, as from vast fires below, and even a dream of him confronting Shan-Chan. About that last she was uncertain, but she knew the others had to mean something. Back when she had been sure she could trust Anaya, back before she had left the tower, before she learned the reality of the Black Aja, a little cautious questioning of the Aes Sedai, done oh so carefully, so Anaya would think it no more than the curiosity she showed about other things, had revealed that a dreamer's dreams about Taviran were almost always significant, and the more strongly Taviran, the more almost always became certainly. But Matt and Perrin were Taviran too, and she'd also dreamed of them. Odd dreams, even more difficult to understand than the dreams of Rand. Matt with a falcon on his shoulder and Perrin with a hawk. Only the hawk held a leash in her talons. Egwene was somehow convinced both hawk and falcon were female, and the hawk was trying to fasten it around Perrin's neck. That made her shiver even now. She did not like dreams about leashes. And that dream of Perrin with a beard, leading a huge pack of wolves that stretched as far as the eye could see. Those about Matt had been even nastier. Matt placing his own left eye on a balance scale. Matt hanging by his neck from a tree limb. There had been a dream of Matt and Shan-Chan too, but she was willing to dismiss that as a nightmare. It had to have been just a nightmare. Just like the one about Matt and the old tongue. That had to come from what she had heard during his healing. She sighed, and the sigh turned into another yawn. She and the others had gone to his room after breakfast to see how he was, but he had not been there. He is probably well enough to go dancing. Light. Now I will probably dream about him dancing with friends again. No more dreams, she told herself firmly. Not now. I will think about them when I am not so tired. She thought of the kitchens, of the midday meal soon to come, and then supper, and breakfast again tomorrow, and pots and cleaning and scrubbing going on forever. If I am ever not tired again. Shifting her position on the bed, she looked at her friends again. Elaine still had her eyes on the list of names. Nynaeve's steps had slowed. Any moment now, Nynaeve will say it again. Nynaeve came to a halt, staring down at Elaine. Put those away. We've been over them 20 times, and there isn't a word that helps. Varen gave us rubbish. The question is, was it all she had, or did she give us rubbish on purpose? As expected. Maybe half an hour till she says it again. Elaine frowned down at her hands, glad she could not see them clearly. The great serpent's ring looked out of place, her hands all wrinkled from long immersion in hot, soapy water. Knowing their names helps, Elaine said, still reading. Knowing what they look like helps. You know very well what I mean, Nynaeve snapped. Egwene sighed and folded her arms in front of her, rested her chin on them. When she had come out of Shiriam's study that morning with the sun still not even a glint on the horizon, Nynaeve had been waiting with a candle in the cold, dark hall. She had not been seeing very clearly, but she was sure Nynaeve had chew stones, and knowing chewing stones would not change anything in the next few minutes. That was why she was so irritable. She's as touchy about her pride as any man I ever met, but she should not take it out on Elaine and me. Right. If Elaine can stand it, she should be able to. She isn't the wisdom anymore. Elaine hardly appeared to notice whether Nynaeve was irritable or not. She frowned into the distance thoughtfully. The answer was the only red. All jobs lost 2 each. Oh, do be quiet, child, Nynaeve said. Elaine wiggled her left hand to display her great ring, gave Nynaeve a meaningful look. No two were born in the same city, and no more than 2 in any one country. Amiko Nagoyen was the youngest, only 4 years older than Elaine and I. Joya Glenn was our grandmother. Egwene did not like it that one of the Black Aja shared her daughter's name. Fool girl. People sometimes have the same name, and you've never had a daughter. It wasn't real. What does that tell us? Nynaeve's voice was too calm. She was ready to explode like a wagon full of fireworks. What secret have you found in it that I missed? I'm getting old and blind after all. It tells us it is all too neat, Elaine said calmly. What chance that 13 women chosen solely because they were dark friends would be so neatly arrayed across age, across nations, across Ajas? Shouldn't there be perhaps 3 Reds, or 4 born in Kyrian, or just 2 the same age if it was all chance? They had women to choose from, or they could not have chosen so random a pattern. There are still black Aja in the tower, or elsewhere I don't know about. It must mean that. Nynaeve gave her braid one ferocious tug. Light, I think you may be right. You did find secrets I couldn't. Light, I was hoping they all went with Leandrin. We do not even know that she is their leader, Elaine said. She could have been ordered to dispose of us. Her mouth twisted. I am afraid I can only think of one reason for them to go to such lengths to spread everything else so. To avoid any pattern except a lack of pattern. I think it means there is a pattern of some kind to the Black Aja. If there's a pattern, Nynaeve said firmly, we will find it. Elaine, if watching your mother run her court taught you to think like this, I'm glad you watched closely. Elaine's answering smile made a dimple in her cheek. Egwene eyed the older woman carefully. It seemed Nynaeve was finally ready to stop being a bear with a sore tooth. She raised her head. Unless they want us to think they're hiding a pattern, so we will waste our time hunting for it when there isn't one. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm only saying we do not know yet. Let's look for it, but I think we ought to look at other things too, don't you? So you finally decided to rouse, Nynaeve said. I thought you had gone to sleep, but she was still smiling. She is right, Elaine said disgustedly. I have built a bridge out of straw. Worse than straw, wishes. Maybe you are right too, Nynaeve. What use is this rubbish? She snatched one paper out of the stack in front of her. Rihanna has black hair with a white streak above her left ear. If I'm close enough to see that, it's closer than I want to be. She grabbed another page. Chesmal Emery is one of the most talented healers anyone has seen in years. Light, could you imagine being healed by one of the Black Aja? A third sheet. Marilyn Gamalfin is fond of cats and goes out of her way to help injured animals. Cats. Pah! She scrabbled all the pages together, crumpling them in her fists. It is useless rubbish. Nynaeve knelt beside her and gently pried her hands from around the papers. Perhaps, and perhaps not. She smoothed the pages carefully on her breast. You found in them something for us to look for. Perhaps we will find more if we are persistent. And there is the other list. Both her eyes and Elaine's darted to Egwene, brown and blue alike, frowning worriedly. Egwene avoided looking at the table where the other sheets lay. She did not want to think about them, but she could not avoid it. The list of ter'angreal had etched itself into her mind. Item: a rod of clear crystal, smooth and perfectly clear, 1 foot long and 1 inch in diameter. Use unknown. Last study made by Corianin Nadil. Item: a figurine of an unclothed woman in alabaster, 1 hand tall. Use unknown. Last study made by Corianin Nadil. Item: a disc, apparently of simple iron yet untouched by rust, 3 inches in diameter, finely engraved on both sides with a tight spiral. Use unknown. Last study made by Corianin Nadil. Item: too many items, and more than half the use unknowns last studied by Corianin Nadil. 13 of them, to be exact. Egwene shivered. It's getting so I do not even like to think of that number. The knowns on the list were fewer, not all of any apparent real use, but hardly more comforting as she saw it. A wooden carving of a hedgehog, no bigger than the last joint of a man's thumb. Such a simple thing, and surely harmless. Any woman who tried to channel through it went to sleep. Half a day of peaceful, dreamless sleep, but it was too close not to make her skin crawl. 3 more had to do with sleep in some way. It was almost a relief to read of a fluted rod of black stone a full pace in length that produced balefire, with the notation, dangerous and almost impossible to control, writ so strong in Baron's hand that it tore the paper in 2 places. Egwene still had no idea what balefire was, but though it surely sounded dangerous if anything ever did, it just as surely had nothing to do with Corianin Nadil or dreams. Nynaeve carried the smoothed-out pages to the table and set them down. She hesitated before spreading the others out and running her finger down one page, then the next. "Here's one Matt would enjoy," she said, in a voice much too light and airy. Item: a carved cluster of 6 spotted dice, joined at the corners, less than 2 inches across. Use unknown, save that channeling through it seems to suspend chance in some way, or twist it. She began to read aloud. Tossed coins presented the same face every time, and in one test landed balanced on edge 100 times in a row. 1,000 tosses of the dice produced 5 crowns 1,000 times. She gave a forced laugh. Matt would love that. Egwene sighed and got to her feet, walked stiffly to the fireplace. Elaine scrambled up, watching as silently as Nynaeve. Pushing her sleeve as far up her arm as it would go, Egwene reached carefully up the chimney. Her fingers touched wool on the smoke shelf, and she pulled out a wadded, singed stocking with a hard lump in the toe. She brushed a smear of soot from her arm, then took the stocking to the table and shook it out. The twisted ring of striped flecked stone spun across the tabletop and fell flat atop a page of the ter'angreal list. For a few moments they just stared at it. "Perhaps," Nynaeve said finally, "Varen simply missed the fact that so many of them were last studied by Corianin." She did not sound as if she really believed it. Elaine nodded, but doubtfully. "I saw her walking in the rain once, soaking wet, and took a cloak to her. She was so wrapped up in whatever she was thinking. I do not believe she knew it was raining until I put the cloak around her shoulders. She could have missed it." "Maybe," Egwene said. "If she did not, she had to know I'd notice as soon as I read the list. I do not know. Sometimes I think Varen notices more than she lets on. I just do not know." "So there's Varen to suspect," Elaine sighed. "If she is Black Aja, then they know exactly what we are doing. And Alana." She gave Egwene an uncertain, sidelong look. Egwene had told them everything, except what happened inside the Terangreal during her testing. She could not bring herself to talk about that, any more than Nynaeve or Elaine could tell of their testings. Everything that happened in the testing chamber, what Shiriam had said about the terrible weakness conferred by the ability to channel, every word Varen had said, whether it seemed important or not. The one part they had had trouble accepting was Alana. Aes Sedai just did not do things like that. No one in her right mind did anything like that, but Aes Sedai least of all. Egwene glowered at them, almost hearing them say it. Aes Sedai are not supposed to lie either, but Varen and the mother seem awfully close with what they tell us. They are not supposed to be Black Aja. I like Alana. Nynaeve tugged her braid, then shrugged. Oh, very well. Perhaps, that is, she did behave oddly. Thank you, Egwene said, and Nynaeve gave her an acknowledging nod as if she had heard no sarcasm. In any case, the Amarlin knows of it, and she can keep an eye on Alana far more easily than we can. What about Elida and Shiriam? I've never been able to like Elida, Elaine said, but I cannot truly believe she is Black Aja. And Shiriam? It's impossible. Nynaeve snorted. It should be impossible for any of them. When we do find them, there is nothing says they'll all be women we do not like. But I don't mean to put suspicion, not this kind of suspicion, on any woman. We need more to go on than that they might have seen something they shouldn't. Egwene nodded agreement as quickly as Elaine, and Nynaeve went on. We will tell the Amarlin that much and put no more weight to it than it deserves, if she ever looks in on us as she said she would. If you are with us when she comes, Elaine, remember she does not know about you. I am not likely to forget it, Elaine said fervently. But we should have some other way to get word to her. My mother would have planned it better. Not if she could not trust her messengers, Nynaeve said. We will wait. Unless you two think one of us should have a talk with Varen, no one would think that remarkable. Elaine hesitated, then gave her head a small shake. Egwene was quicker and more vigorous with hers. Slip of the mind or not, Varen had left out too much to be trusted. Good. Nynaeve sounded more than satisfied. I'm just as pleased we cannot talk to the Amarlin when we choose. This way we make our own decisions, act when and as we decide, without her directing our every step. Her hand ran down the pages listing stolen Terangreal as if she were reading it again, then closed on the striped stone ring. And the first decision concerns this. It's the first thing we have seen that has any real connection to Liandrin and the others. She frowned at the ring, then took a deep breath. I'm going to sleep with it tonight. Egwene did not hesitate before taking the ring out of Nynaeve's hand. She wanted to hesitate. She wanted to keep her hands by her sides, but she did not, and she was pleased. I am the one they say might be a dreamer. I do not know whether that gives me any advantage, but Varen said it's dangerous using this. Whichever of us uses it, she needs any advantage she can find. Nynaeve gripped her braid and opened her mouth as if to protest. When she finally spoke, though, it was to say, Are you sure, Egwene? We do not even know if you are a dreamer, and I can channel more strongly than you. I still think Egwene cut her off. You can channel more strongly if you are angry. Can you be sure you'll be angry in a dream? Will you have time to become angry before you need to channel? Light. We don't even know that anyone can channel in a dream. If one of us has to do it, and you are right, it is the only connection we have, it should be me. Maybe I really am a dreamer. Besides, Varen did give it to me. Nynaeve looked as if she wanted to argue, but at last she gave a grudging nod. Very well. But Elaine and I will be there. I do not know what we can do, but if anything goes wrong, perhaps we can wake you up, or we will be there. Elaine nodded, too. Now that she had their agreement, Egwene felt a queasiness in the pit of her stomach. I talked them into it. I wish I did not want them to talk me out of it. She became aware of a woman standing in the doorway, a woman in novice white, with her hair in long braids. Did no one ever teach you to knock, Elsa? Nynaeve said. Egwene hid the stone ring inside her fist. She had the strangest feeling that Elsa had been staring at it. "I have a message for you," Elsa said calmly. Her eyes studied the table with all the papers scattered on it, then the three women around it. "From the Ammerlin." Egwene exchanged wondering looks with Nynaeve and Elaine. "Well, what is it?" Nynaeve demanded. Elsa arched an eyebrow in amusement. "The belongings left behind by Leandrin and the others were put in the third storeroom on the right, from the main stairs in the second basement under the library." She glanced at the papers on the table again and left, neither hurrying nor moving slowly. Egwene felt as if she could not breathe. "We're afraid to trust anybody, and the Ammerlin decides to trust Elsa Grinwell of all people. That fool girl cannot be trusted not to blab to anyone who'll listen." Nynaeve started for the door. Egwene grabbed up her skirts and darted past her at a run. Her shoes skidded on the tiles of the gallery, but she caught a glimpse of white vanishing down the nearest ramp and dashed after it. She must be running too to be so far ahead already. Why is she running? The flash of white was already disappearing down another ramp. Egwene followed. A woman turned to face her at the foot of the ramp, and Egwene stopped in confusion. Whoever she was, this was certainly not Elsa. All in silver and white silk, she sparked feelings Egwene had never had before. She was taller, more beautiful by far, and the look in her black eyes made Egwene feel small, scrawny, and none too clean. "She can probably channel more of the power than I can, too. Light, she is probably smarter than all three of us put together on top of it. It isn't fair for one woman to—" Abruptly, she realized the way her thoughts were going. Her cheeks reddened, and she gave herself a shake.
Oh,
She'd
yeah.
never felt less
Both
than
mine are already
overwhelmed
down,
before,
too.
and she was not about to start now. "Bold," the woman said. "You are bold to go running about so, alone, where so many murders have been done." She sounded almost pleased. Egwene drew herself up and straightened her dress hurriedly, hoping the other woman would not notice, knowing she did, wishing the woman had not seen her running like a child. "Stop that!" "Pardon, but I'm looking for a novice who came this way, I think. She has large, dark eyes and dark hair in braids. She's plump and pretty in a way. Did you see which way she went?" The tall woman looked her up and down in an amused way. Egwene could not be sure, but she thought the woman might have glanced a moment at the clenched fist by her side, where she still held the stone ring. "I do not think you will catch up to her. I saw her, and she was running quite fast. I suspect she is far away from here by now." "Aes Sedai," Egwene began, but she was given no chance to ask which way Elsa had gone. Something that might have been anger or annoyance flashed through those black eyes. "I have taken up enough time with you for now. I have more important matters to see to. Leave me." She gestured back the way Egwene had come. So strong was the command in her voice that Egwene turned and was 3 steps up the ramp before she realized what she was doing. Bristling, she spun back. "Aes Sedai or no, The gallery was empty. Frowning, she dismissed the nearest doors. No one lived in those rooms except possibly mice, and ran down the ramp, peered both ways, followed the curve of the gallery with her eyes all the way around. She even peered over the rail, down into the small garden of the Accepted, and studied the other galleries, higher as well as lower. She saw 2 Accepted in their banded dresses, one Faelane and the other a woman she knew by sight if not name. But there was no woman in silver and white anywhere. Chapter 26. Behind a Lock. Shaking her head, Egwene walked back to the doors she had dismissed. She had to go somewhere. Inside the first, the few furnishings were shapeless mounds under dusty cloths, and the air seemed stale, as if the door had not been opened in some time. She grimaced. There were mouse tracks in the dust on the floor, but no others. 2 more doors, opened hastily, showed the same thing. It was no surprise. There were many more empty rooms than occupied in the Accepted's galleries. When she pulled her head out of the third room, Nynaeve and Elaine were coming down the ramp behind her with no particular haste. Is she hiding? Nynaeve asked in surprise. In there? I lost her. Egwene peered both ways along the curving gallery. Where did she go? She did not mean Elsa. If I had thought Elsa could outrun you, Elaine said with a smile, I'd have chased her too. But she has always looked too plump for running to me. Her smile was worried, though. We will have to find her later, Nynaeve said, and make sure she knows how to keep her mouth shut. How could the Ammerland trust that girl? I thought I was right on top of her, Egwene said slowly, but it was someone else. Nynaeve, I turned my back for a moment and she was gone. Not Elsa. I never even saw her. The woman I thought was Elsa at first. She was just gone, and I don't know where. Elaine's breath caught. One of the soulless? She looked around hastily, but the gallery was still empty except for the three of them. Not her, Egwene said firmly. I am not going to tell them she made me feel 6 years old, with a torn dress, a dirty face, and a runny nose. She was no gray man. She was tall and striking with black eyes and black hair. You'd notice her in a crowd of 1,000. I had never seen her before, but I think she is Aes Sedai. She must be. Nynaeve waited as though for more, then said impatiently, If you see her again, point her out to me, if you think there's cause. We've no time to stand here talking. I need to see what is in that storeroom before Elsa has a chance to tell the wrong person about it. Maybe they were careless. Let's not give them a chance to correct it if they were. As she fell in beside Nynaeve, with Elaine on the other side, Egwene realized she still had the stone ring, Corianan Medil's Terangreal, clutched in her fist. Reluctantly, she tucked it into her pouch and pulled the drawstrings tight. As long as I don't need to sleep with the bloody... But that's what I am planning, isn't it? But that was for tonight, and no use worrying about it now. As they made their way through the tower, she kept an eye out for the woman in silver and white. She was not sure why she was relieved not to see her. I am a grown woman, and quite capable, thank you. Still, she was just as glad that no one they encountered looked even remotely like her. The more she thought of the woman, the more she felt there was something wrong about her. Right, I'm starting to see the black Aja under my bed. Only, maybe they are under the bed. The library stood a little apart from the tall, thick shaft of the white tower proper, its pale stone heavily streaked with blue, and it looked much like crashing waves frozen at their climax. Those waves loomed as large as a palace in the morning light, and Egwene knew they certainly contained as many rooms as one, but all those rooms, those below the odd corridors and the upper levels where Varen had her chambers, were filled with shelves, and the shelves filled with books, manuscripts, papers, scrolls, maps, and charts collected from every nation over the course of 3,000 years. Not even the great libraries in Tyr and Cairhien held so many. The librarians, Brown sisters all, guarded those shelves and guarded the doors as closely to make sure not a scrap of paper left unless they knew who took it and why. But it was not to one of the guarded entrances that Nynaeve led Egwene and Elaine. Around the foundations of the library, lying flat to the ground in the shade of tall pecan trees, were other doors, both large and small. Laborers sometimes needed access to the storerooms beneath, and the librarians did not approve of sweating men tracking through their preserve. Nynaeve pulled up one of those, no bigger than the front door of a farmhouse, and motioned the others down the steep flight of stairs descending into darkness. When she let it down behind them, all light vanished. Egwene opened herself to Saidar, it came so smoothly that she barely realized what she was doing, and channeled a trickle of the power that flooded through her. For a moment, the mere feel of that rush surging within her threatened to overwhelm other sensations. A small ball of bluish-white light appeared, balanced in the air above her hand. She took a deep breath and reminded herself of why she was walking stiffly. It was a link to the rest of the world. The feel of her linen shift against her skin returned, of woolen stockings and her dress. With a small pang of regret, She banished the desire to pull in more, to let Saidar absorb her. Elaine made a glowing sphere for herself at the same time, and the pair provided more light than 2 lanterns would have. It feels so wonderful, doesn't it? She murmured. Be careful, Egwene said. I am, Elaine sighed. It just feels. I will be careful. This way, Nynaeve told them sharply, and brushed by to lead them down. She did not go too far ahead. She was not angry, and had to use the light the other 2 provided. The dusty side corridor by which they had entered, lined with wooden doors set in gray stone walls, took nearly 100 paces to reach the much wider main hall that ran the length of the library. Their lights showed footprints overlaying footprints in the dust, most from the large boots men would wear, and most themselves faded by dust. The ceiling was higher here, and some of the doors nearly large enough for a barn. The main stairs at the end, half the width of the hall, were where large things were brought down. Another flight beside them led deeper. Nynaeve took it without applause. Egwene followed quickly. The bluish light washed out Elaine's face, but Egwene thought it still looked paler than it should. We could scream our lungs out down here, and no one would hear a whimper. She felt a lightning bolt form, or the potential for one, and nearly stumbled. She had never before channeled 2 flows at once. It did not seem difficult at all. The main hall of the second basement was much like the first level, wide and dusty, but with a lower ceiling. Nynaeve hurried to the 3rd door on the right and stopped. The door was not large, but its rough wooden planks somehow gave an impression of thickness. A round iron lock hung from a length of stout chain that was drawn tight through 2 thick staples, one in the door, the other cemented into the wall. Lock and chain alike had the look of newness. There was almost no dust on them. A lock! Nynaeve jerked at it. The chain had no give, and neither did the lock. Did either of you see a lock anywhere else? She pulled it again, then flung it against the door hard enough to bounce. The bang echoed down the hall. I did not see one other locked door. She pounded a fist on the rough wood. Not one! Calm yourself, Elaine said. There is no need to throw a tantrum. I could open the lock myself if I could see how the inside of it works. We will open it some way. I do not want to calm myself, Nynaeve snapped. I want to be furious. I want... Letting the rest of the tirade fade from her awareness, Egwene touched the chain. She had learned more things than how to make lightning bolts since leaving Tar Valon. One was an affinity for metal. That came from Earth, one of the 5 powers few women had much strength in. The other was fire, but she had it, and she could feel the chain, feel inside the chain, feel the tiniest bits of the cold metal, the patterns they made. The power within her quivered in time to the vibrations of those patterns. Move out of my way, Egwene. She looked around and saw Nynaeve wrapped in the glow of Saidar and holding a pry bar, so close in color to the blue-white of the light that it was nearly invisible. Nynaeve frowned at the chain, muttered something about leverage, and the pry bar was suddenly twice as long. Move, Egwene! Egwene moved. Thrusting the end of the pry bar through the chain, Nynaeve braced it, then heaved with all her strength. The chain snapped like thread. Nynaeve gasped and stumbled halfway across the hall in surprise, and the pry bar clattered to the floor. Straightening, Nynaeve stared from the bar to the chain in amazement. The pry bar vanished. I think I did something to the chain, Egwene said, and I wish I knew what. You could have said something, Nynaeve muttered. She pulled the rest of the chain from the staples and threw open the door. Well, are you going to stand there all day? The dusty room inside was perhaps 10 paces square, but it held only a heap of large bags made of heavy brown cloth, each stuffed full, tagged, and sealed with the flame of Tar Valon. Egwene did not have to count them to know there were 13. She moved her ball of light to the wall and fastened it there. She was not certain how she did it, but when she took her hand away, the light remained. I keep learning how to do things without knowing what they are, she thought nervously. Elaine frowned at her as if considering, then hung her light on the wall, too. Watching, Egwene thought she saw what it was she had done. She learned it from me, but I just learned it from her. She shivered. Nynaeve went straight to tumbling the bags apart and reading the tags. Rihanna, Joya Bier, these are what we are after. She examined the seal on one bag, then broke the wax and unwound the binding cords. At least we know no one's been here before us. Egwene chose a bag and broke the seal without reading the name on the tag. She did not really want to know whose possessions she was searching. When she upended them onto the dusty floor, they proved to be mainly old clothes and shoes, with a few ripped and crumpled papers of the sort that might hide under the wardrobe of a woman who was not too assiduous in seeing her rooms cleaned. I don't see anything useful here. A cloak that would not do for rags, a torn half of a map of some city. Tyr, it says in the corner. 3 stockings that need darning. She stuck her finger through the hole in a velvet slipper that had no mate, and waggled it at the others. This one left no clues behind. Amico did not leave anything either, Elaine said glumly, tossing clothes aside with both hands. It might as well be rags. Wait, here's a book. Whoever bundled these up must have been in a hurry to toss in a book. Customs and Ceremonies of the Tyrant Court. The cover is torn off, but the librarians were wanted anyway. The librarians certainly would. No one threw away books, no matter how badly damaged. Tyr, Nynaeve said in a flat voice. Kneeling amid the clutter from the bag she was searching, she retrieved a scrap of paper she had already thrown away. A list of trading ships on the Erin, with the dates they sailed from Tar Valon and the dates they were expected to arrive in Tyr. It could be a coincidence, Egwene said slowly. Perhaps, Nynaeve said. She folded the paper and tucked it up her sleeve, then broke the seal on another bag. When they finally finished, every bag searched twice and discarded rubbish heaped around the edges of the room, Egwene sat down on one of the empty bags, so engrossed that she barely noticed her own wince. Drawing up her knees, she studied the little collection they had made, all laid in a row. It is too much, Elaine said. There is too much of it. Too much, Nynaeve agreed. There was a second book, a tattered leather-bound volume entitled Observations on a Visit to Tyr, with half its pages falling out. Caught in the lining of a badly torn cloak in Chesmal Emery's bag, where it might have slipped through a rip in one of the pockets of the cloak, had been another list of trading vessels. It said no more than the names, but they were all on the other list too, and according to that, those vessels had all sailed in the early morning after the night Leandrin and the others left the tower. There was a hastily sketched plan of some large building, with one room faintly noted as Heart of the Stone, and a page with the names of 5 inns, the word Tyr heading the page badly smudged, but barely readable. There's something from everyone, Egwene muttered. Every one of them left something pointing to a journey to Tyr. How could anyone miss seeing it if they looked? Why did the Amerlin say nothing of this? The Amerlin, Nynaeve said bitterly, keeps her own counsel, and what matter if we burn for it? She drew a deep breath and sneezed from the dust they had stirred up. What worries me is that I'm looking at bait. Bait? Egwene said, but she saw it as soon as she spoke. Nynaeve nodded. Bait, a trap, or maybe a diversion. But trap or diversion, it's so obvious no one could be taken in by it. Unless they do not care whether whoever found this saw the trap or not. Uncertainty tinged Elaine's voice. Or perhaps they meant it to be so obvious that whoever found it would dismiss Tyr immediately. Egwene wished she could not believe that the Black Aja could be as sure of themselves as that. She realized she was gripping her pouch in her fingers, running her thumb along the twisted curve of the stone ring inside. Perhaps they meant to taunt whoever found it, she said softly. Perhaps they thought whoever found this would rush headlong after them in anger and pride. Did they know we would find it? Do they see us that way? Burn me, Nynaeve growled. It was a shock. Nynaeve never used such language. For a time, they simply stared in silence at the array. What do we do now? Elaine asked finally. Egwene squeezed the ring hard. Dreaming was closely linked to foretelling. The future and events in other places could appear in the dreamer's dreams. Maybe we will know after tonight. Nynaeve looked at her, silent and expressionless, then chose out a dark skirt that seemed not to have too many holes and rips, and began bundling in it the things they had found. For now, she said, we will take this back to my room and hide it. I think we just have time if we don't want to be late to the kitchens. Late, Egwene thought. The longer she held the ring through her pouch, the greater the urgency she felt. We're already a step behind, but maybe we won't be too late. Chapter 27.
All right, everyone. I'm gonna call into his life for tonight. I want to thank everyone for stopping by, and everyone keeps stopping by. I appreciate all y'all support. Until next time, everyone. Y'all stay safe out there.